All right, we're about ready to get on out. Hand it over to Greg Silver. We're going to take you right up until the end of the Warrior game, and they will have Dubs OT. I'm going to guess that will be in about 45 minutes or so.
Maybe less.
Could be.
Depending on this game.
Well, yeah, we always used to count it as about 3 minutes per minute, so it's going to be a minimum of 24. And then, depending on how many fouls or anything there is at the end of the game, hopefully no fouls.
That'd mean they were up big.
Plus 15 working margin right now. And I tell you what, it's good that they're having these off games from Steph Curry against the Hornets and the Wizards. Could you have these against the Nuggets or the Knicks, the Celtics?
Well, he did.
Probably not.
Well, and they lost.
My point, you're going to lose that game. And Clay's having a great game tonight. So, yeah, we'll see if maybe they can cruise to a victory. That's the Warriors. What am I talking about? They don't cruise to victories in the fourth quarter.
Why would you do that?
No, they just don't do that. What's going on, Greg?
Not much, boys. What's going on with you?
Nada.
Do you know the fattest state in the union per capita?
Tell me.
No, do you have a guess?
Fattest state in the union per capita.
Really hung him out to dry here. You got a guess? Go ahead.
Can we go with Missouri?
Oh, no. That's mean, dude. Come on, dude. Don't be mean. Don't be, yeah.
Offensive.
That's offensive, dude.
I'm still bitter about the Super Bowl.
They're not even top 3. Number 3 is Oklahoma.
Okay.
Is it really?
Out.
Number 2, Louisiana, just barely.
That would make sense.
That would make sense because they're eating good down in Louisiana.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not even hating on that. I'm like, wow, I'd be enormous if I lived in Louisiana.
They fry shoes down there and eat them.
I'd wear some beignets as shoes if I was down there.
You should.
Just inject it in.
Yeah.
I wouldn't eat it after Tim. That's something you'd do. Tim just said, what the hell? I'll just eat some trash. Right, Tim? No, West Virginia.
If you fry it, it tastes good. Dude, is that
West Virginia?
Is that a Triscuit box?
Is that a French shoe?
Is correct.
West Virginia.
Yeah. I'll eat it.
West Virginia.
Yeah.
This here's Virginia.
Yeah, West Virginia.
There you go. You been to West Virginia?
Coal miner's daughter.
I've never been to West Virginia.
No, me neither.
I got to say, though, this U.S. trivia is not as fun as the continent of Africa trivia that we're getting on the show this week.
Yes. It's been fantastic.
I tell you, it played in for me. Like I was watching like Jeopardy or something the other night. A couple nights ago, this weekend, I was catching up on my Jeopardy.
Sure, I'll buy that.
And, no, they had the Zimbabwe question.
Did they?
Yeah, they said.
You told me that.
Yeah, I said yesterday, this country in Africa this country was the first ever to print a $1 trillion bill. Yep. Which, of course,
I'll act surprised, but obviously I listen to Tolbert and Copes, so I knew this.
You don't have to kiss ass, dude. You have to suck up so much, Greg. You're already hosting the show, right? But yeah, the $1 trillion bill, which translated to American 40 cents, I believe, was the conversion rate. How are we feeling about the Dubs, Greg?
I'm feeling much better than we were about a month ago. JD and I had some honest conversations behind the glass of we don't know what the season's going to be when they get after the All-Star break. You know, the trade deadline was a huge discussion for a long, long time, and the Warriors stayed put at the trade deadline. Jonathan Kuminga emerged and has been playing much better, much smarter basketball. Andrew Wiggins is kind of getting it together. I think, and Tom, give me your thoughts on Wiggins, because I know we talked about him early in the season when he was struggling. Wiggins is the kind of player that can have a solid stat line, but it will certainly not tell the story a lot of times. Like Wiggins, as of late, I think has had not crazy different stats, but he's had a lot more timely buckets or defended the best guard one-on-one for a whole second half, and like that makes a big difference.
I think he's been, for the most part, engaged defensively this year. Like, he's gotten after it defensively. It's just his offense has been, I was going to say spotty, but for the stretch, it wasn't even spotty. It was just bad. And then he stopped being aggressive. He stopped shooting it as much. Recently, last few games, he's been a little, here and there. But that one stretch he had, he was aggressive. He was taking it to the hole. He was getting fouled. He was confidently shooting that mid-range jump shot, and they need that from him because he's the one guy that kind of gives them the mid-range game. Klay is mostly threes. He'll go mid-range a little bit. Steph's kind of, he's threes, but he'll get to the rim. But, I mean, Wiggins is that one guy that can give you the mid-range, and Kuminga. And Kuminga's kind of rolling. He can give you the mid-range as well. But, no, Wiggins is absolutely important to this team in terms of he can guard the bigger wings. And there's always seemingly some bigger wing. There's Draymond again. Told you, first quarter, bucket. Fourth quarter, not bucket.
That's the stat, by the way, from
Yeah, that's my stat. Who leads the NBA in first quarter field goal percentage with at least 40 attempts?
Has to be Draymond.
Draymond, 53%.
Leads the NBA in first quarter field goal percentage.
The NBA.
That's absurd.
I mean, it's crazy.
That's one of the most alarming notes I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's wild to think that Draymond leads the NBA in first quarter thrpoint attempts. It's just crazy.
Tim has the note. He's made 1 3 in the second half all season.
So when he made that three,
Holy cow.
I'm right where Tim is sitting, also cutting the Warrior game, doing a little back and forth, and he launches it, and I'm thinking to myself, has he made one in the second half all year? Just because I didn't remember. Turns out it was literally the first one he made.
When was that? When was the second half three?
Against the Lakers.
It was against the Lakers, so it was last week.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Wow,
and
that's
they beat
the
him
first one.
Out of the bye, or out of the break.
So that's stunning. Not only leading the league in percentage the first quarter, but that's only made 1 second half.
It might be the lowest percentage in the second half.
I mean, yeah, you might be. You might be right. That's wild.
That's pretty funny.
But no, Wiggins is absolutely important if this team's going to do anything in the playoffs. There's no doubt about it.
There you go.
Yeah.
How about that? Lots to talk about when the Warriors game wraps up. We'll have Dubs OT. Greg Silver's going to take you up until JD's ready to go at the end of the Warriors and the Wiz game. Have a good show, bro.
Yep.
Thank you. Appreciate you both.
Should we thank everybody?
Let's do it.
Our guest, Danny Emmerman and Jim Bowden.
That was it.
Don't call me. George Sedano was yesterday. Thank you very much, though. Appreciate it. Copes loves hearing it. And
see me after the show, Tim. Bring your playbook.
He might hear it tomorrow. Yeah. Thank you very much, Derek. Thank you very much, Tim. Great job today.
Good news is you're fired.
Bad news is, anyway, coming up, Greg Silver will take you right up until the end of the Warriors and the Wizards right here on the Sports Leader. Take it away, Derek.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
It's time for you to sound off, for you to speak your mind. This show is for the faithful.
Touchdown. Touchdown.
Dub Nation.
Bang. Steph Curry again.
And the seam heads that bleed orange and black.
Good man.
This is Sports Phone KNBR. Sponsored by Industrial Metal Supply on the Sports Leader. Check the live stream on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
I'm tired of losing to Purdue.
Thank you, Tim. As always. What's up, everybody? I don't even know if I necessarily want to call it an official sports phone, but I am Greg Silver, and I will be taking you all the way up to Dubs OT with my guy, John Dickinson. Tim is on the board right now for the moment. I got to give Tim some credit because he was pretty close on his third quarter prediction for the score of Warriors versus Wizards. Close game in the first half, a little bit sloppy, showing some shadow of Warriors versus Hornets, which we just had not that long ago. And he's just kind of like, Warriors, give him a 38-21 third quarter, and we can start paying more attention to leading up to Dubs OT and not as much attention to the actual game at hand. 38-17.
Great job, brother.
Great job, brother, indeed. Hit the nail on the head with the Warriors team score, and then just overestimated those Washington Wizards just a little bit. Hit 17 overall. But listen, we got a really good show coming ahead for Dubs OT. I'm allowed to say that because I'm not going to be talking the whole time. That's going to be our guy, John Dickinson. And listen, the Warriors, if they can hold on win this game, it will put them to 3-1 after the All-Star break. It is also going to be the first time in 5 years that they've won 6 consecutive road games. Remember when they barely won 6 road games at all last year? That was crazy. And now they're playing their old friend, Jordan Poole, out in Washington. Remember, Draymond Green was not present for the first game that they faced Jordan Poole in a Wizards uniform. That was back at Chase Center in the middle of the Draymond indefinite suspension. It was the first time these two were meeting up on the court again. Not a lot of smoke tonight between the two. And I'll always speak highly of Jordan Poole. I think when you consider the trade to get Chris Paul for Jordan Poole, it aged very nicely. The Warriors offloaded a huge contract that they gave to the guy that was supposed to be the heir apparent and keep this thing going when Stephen Curry was a little older or finished his career as a whole. And then Jordan Poole really struggled last year. There, of course, was the drama with the incident of him getting punched by Draymond Green. And now he's out in Washington, and not even the guy who's putting up big statistics on a bad team like was expected to be. He's struggling on a bad team. And I hope that whatever Jordan Poole's full potential is, he can reach that in the NBA. But let's turn the focus to Chris Paul for right now, because Chris Paul was the guy who was acquired for giving up Jordan Poole. 2 very different players. There's the age factor, obviously. But then there's the style of play. And Chris Paul, being the quintessential point guard, one of the all-time best at that position, was on full display tonight. And yes, it is the Washington Wizards who, at one point, Kyle Kuzma said of his own team, we couldn't defend a stop sign right now. But Chris Paul, pretty nice display of playmaking tonight. He had a screen that he set hard to give Jonathan Kuminga a wide open dunk. He was hitting some threes. Stephen Curry was cold in the first half. Did not score in the first half for the first time since 2019. And as is the case with the first time that Klay Thompson came off the bench and we had a sample size of 1 game, we have another sample size of 1 game, which is we're seeing what this second unit backcourt looks like with Chris Paul and Klay Thompson. And in the 1 game that is still not complete, I will give it a full thumbs up. So we will take some calls coming up here shortly, and I want to ask you, what's your first impression of Chris Paul's return? Are you concerned about Steve Kerr having to manage more rotation dilemmas at the end of games and another Hall of Fame personality? Are you seeing it as more of a positive like has been on display for the better part of tonight? So 808 KNBR, that's 415-808-5627. We're going to plan to sneak in a couple of calls before we get going with Dubs OT, when we're going to link up with our guy, John Dickinson, who will take you all the way up to around 8 o'clock. So let's take a quick pause right now. We'll get those phones set up. 808-5627. What is your impression of Chris Paul's return? Does it bring you more concern or more optimism? I'm Greg Silver, and this is the lead-up to Dubs OT on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
San Ramon, shout out to you for supporting KNBR, San Ramon's sports leader.
Andrew Wiggins will be out tonight due to personal reasons against the Washington Wizards. There's more on that story. It's trending now, KNBR.com and the KNBR app.
right time is the right time for Sports Phone KNBR. Let's go on the Sports Leader. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
Nope. Yup. I feel bad for the people on the YouTube because they can't hear the E40 come through, so they're just like, who is this white guy? But Jacob Violante did a great job queuing up the E40 music. Here's the deal, guys. Thought I might be on for a good 20 minutes or so. We had a commercial break. Warriors just wrapped it up. They get the 123-112 victory over the Washington Wizards. They are 3-1 since the All-Star break. And look, I've been saying it, 22-7. That was my vision for the post-All-Star reality. They are now 3-1. They lost to the defending champions. Couple of ugly-ish wins in there. Beat the Lakers without LeBron James. And wins are wins when you're the 10 seed. Got to keep this thing going. One thing at a time. JD is going to connect with us shortly. And it's a good one for the Warriors all around. Chris Paul in his return was big. He was hitting threes. His hand didn't look all that hurt. Klay Thompson, big off the bench again. Really comfortable in the third quarter. And the Warriors are going to keep this thing going. 25 for Klay. 6 of 11 from downtown, 9 of 16 overall, and he had 4 assists, which honestly felt like he could have had more with the way he was just flowing and not forcing shots. Klay Thompson, one heck of a night as he continues to roll off the bench. And I'm being told that our guy John Dickinson is ready to roll here on Dubs OT, so we'll get you connected as the Warriors finish it with a win, 123-112 over the Wizards. And Dubs OT with JD starts now.
Dub Nation. Time for the real and inside story on Warriors basketball.
Curry sidestep, Curry drive, Curry flip, Curry good!
This is Dubs OT with John Dickinson on KNBR 1045 and 68. Streaming live at twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
All right, Warriors get the job done. 123-112 is the final. It is Dubs OT with JD here on KNBR, the sports leader. 808 KNBR is the number. It's 6 consecutive road wins for the Warriors. They bounce back off of one of the few losses that they've taken here over the course of the last month, basically. Warriors now 12-5 since January the 24th. They wipe away the bad taste from the second half of the Denver game, really the final 3 minutes of the first half plus the second half of the Denver game, and now 11-3 since January 30th after the double OT loss to the Lakers, the back-to-back 1-point losses to the Kings and the Lakers. And this team's playing good basketball away from Chase Center. They're going to have to play better than they have at Chase Center down the stretch here, but the reality is now with 25 games to go, and the Warriors sitting at 30-27. They've got 15 on the road and 10 at home. So playing well on the road is going to be paramount for this team, in addition to the ability to have to play better on the home floor over those final 10. But playing better at home is a next week problem. Playing well on the road, as the Warriors did tonight, is the order of the week for Golden State, and so far so good. As Chris Paul makes his return, playing for the first time since January the 5th, and Chris Paul really impactful in this game for the Warriors, right around that 20 to 25-minute tops mark that we've talked a lot about here on not only Dubs OT as we've prepped for Chris Paul's return, but also when you look at some of the Just Dubs shows as well, kind of laying out rotations and lineups and the way everything stacks up for the Warriors here down the stretch. Chris Paul plus 17, knocked down 3 3-pointers, had 6 assists and 4 steals and 4 rebounds, but he did it in 22 minutes. Steve Kerr with Andrew Wiggins missing this game due to a family and personal matter. Went to Moses Moody, and I loved it. Went to Moses Moody in the starting lineup. Thought that was it just made too much sense as we start to dissect a little bit of this Warriors win in the nation's capital this afternoon and on into the evening here as Dubs OT gets rolling here on KNBR, the sports leader. Again, 808-KNBR is the number to give us a call or shoot us a text here. Appreciate Greg Silver for bridging the gap between Tolbert and Copes and Dubs OT, starting with the early East Coast start. We're going to hear plenty from Greg here on Dubs OT as we get you on into the night here on KNBR, the sports leader. But, appreciate everybody as folks dive in on YouTube and Twitch, and the YouTube chat gets rolling as it often does here. A lot of the regulars filing in, a lot of people wanting to react to a big-time Warriors victory. The text line is open as well. Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line, 808-KNBR, the number to give us a call and or shoot us a text. All right, so just kind of running through some of the key storylines here. Chris Paul's return, I think, was the headliner, coupled with the fact that Andrew Wiggins, due to the personal and family matter, was going to miss this game. What would Steve Kerr do as far as the starting lineup? Well, he used Wiggins' absence as an opportunity to get Moses Moody some run, and Moses Moody has been the player that's been out of favor for the Warriors and out of the rotation with this new look revamp that the Warriors have had here over the course of the last month or so. And unfortunately for Moody's been the guy that has been the odd man out. And so why mess with inserting Klay Thompson back into the starting lineup when it's been such a big story that Klay's now going to be the super sub sixth man for this team, at least moving forward? There's been so much discussion about Chris Paul coming back and how he would fit in and how he was going to help anchor that bench group, which now features Klay Thompson, potentially Dario Saric, maybe an Andrew Wiggins, although tonight it was Moses Moody and a Trace Jackson Davis. How would that all shake out? So Steve Kerr said, I'm going to get Moody some minutes at the 3. I'm going to keep Chris Paul in the bench role and keep Klay Thompson in the bench roles that they are projected to have here down the stretch of the season, and let the vets continue to get comfortable with the balance of veteran and youth that the Warriors have found here, and not upset too much of what that starting group has been able to do. Keep it all the same. With Pajemski out there and Stephen Curry, Kuminga, who had himself a really nice game, and Draymond Green, of course, playing the center. Keep everybody aligned there in what you want their roles to be. And, you start just kind of running through this. Couple of early turnovers for the Warriors. Kuminga was going to work in the post, a real aggressive Jonathan Kuminga. I thought this was a nice game for Jonathan Kuminga tonight, to look to spread his wings a little bit, to look to try to do a little bit more. My take on Jonathan Kuminga as far as, like opponents, right? Like anytime Kuminga's going up against a younger, inexperienced team, I feel like that in terms of, where he is at in his career, those are the kinds of opponents to where I think he's got to have a little bit more flexibility to look to dominate. And I think, Washington certainly at 9 and 49 now fits the bill as far as that goes. And so, the Wizards are just not that good. And Kuminga's a really talented young player. So I thought Kuminga, looking to be a little bit more aggressive early and maybe take some shots that would be bad shots in other games. Didn't do that in this game tonight. And then Kuminga fell in line and ended up with a really nice game. It was the quintessential everything at the rim. He didn't even attempt a 3. It was all transition. It was all cuts. It was basically, other than a couple of ISOs early in the game, all driving and slashing to the basket. Almost a perfect Jonathan Kuminga offensive game. I've told you I love the 20-point Jonathan Kuminga games when it's at an extremely efficient shooting level, and 10 of 13 does the trick there with, again, most of them right around the basket or right around putting people in the basket for JK. So I liked Kuminga early. Stephen Curry couldn't buy a bucket early in this game. Another cold start. Curry ended up not scoring. We'll let you know here just all of the numbers as far as Stephen Curry being held scoreless. You got to go back to the 2019 Western semifinals. The last time that he was scoreless in a first half, you got to go back to 2012, the last time that it happened in a regular season. And the Warriors, not great defensively early. They found themselves down by 9 early. but then it cut it to 2 by the end of the quarter. Turnovers, again, a big part of the problem. 5 turnovers in that first quarter for the Warriors. They found themselves down 25-23 after 1, and then 33-24 in the second quarter. But Dario Saric, Klay Thompson, Moses Moody, Chris Paul, each hit a 3 in succession, and it was a 12-0 run. Chris Paul out there with that group that featured Klay Thompson, Saric, Trace Jackson-Davis, and tonight Moses Moody in for Andrew Wiggins. And the bench was one of the big storylines for the Warriors in this one. At one point, it was a 51-11 bench point advantage with Chris Paul running the show. It ends up 59-15 in favor of the Warriors with the GP2 13, Klay 25, Chris Paul, the balance game that he had, even Saric and Trace Jackson-Davis with 5 points apiece. But really that second quarter early is what flipped it. Productive first stint for Chris Paul in his return, playing for the first time since January 5th. And the Warriors were a plus 10 in the non-Curry minutes. And everybody that was getting an opportunity was playing well, and that helped the Warriors turn the tide there from down 2 to up 2 at 60-58. The Warriors let a little bit of the lead that they had built there in quarter number 2 get away, and you're thinking, all right, how hard are the Warriors going to have to fight this one, as far as the second half goes. But then Golden State in quarter number 3, they really take it over. GP2 with a steal and score. The Warriors pushed it up to 8, then 14. Klay Thompson came in and was hot from deep. I mean, this was the Klay sixth man, 6 of 11 from deep, 25, and he's really played well in these games off the bench for the most part. That's now 3 out of 4 basically for Klay Thompson, or 4 out of 5 basically for Klay Thompson, where he's played really well coming off the bench here since the final game before the All-Star break when Steve Kerr decided that he was going to make the switch. But yeah, Klay took some tough ones because he was hot, but you'll take the 9 of 16, you'll take the 6 of 11, you'll take the 25 points. And the Warriors with the third quarter dominance. The bench dominated this one. The third quarter, the Warriors go 38-17 to wind up flipping the thing as Golden State up 23 going to the fourth. Not a great fourth quarter for the Warriors. You had Moses Moody making plays to kind of tie off the third quarter. Steal into to stop a break on one end, and then he has the behind the back save of the ball going out of bounds, diving into the seats. That ended up getting Kuminga a dunk on the other end, and just a really nice Moses Moody game all told. And look, Moody, when he gets the opportunity, is going to step up and step in and fill the void and play really well. And Moody did do that tonight in his 22 minutes to score the 12 points and knock down 4 of 7 from 3. And Moses Moody always stays ready. Always, you're never really worried about him, and always kind of making you, for the most part, wondering when he is able to play like he does in the games tonight, why isn't he a part of things? Unfortunately, I think for him it's just a numbers game, but Steve Kerr's going to have to try to figure it out a little bit in terms of that 2-3, in some of the 2-3 minutes, some of the 3-4 minutes in certain matchups, I think, to try to get Moses Moody out there a little bit. We'll see how long Andrew Wiggins is out. The Warriors not going to play until Thursday in New York. Then they've got the back-to-back taking on Toronto Friday, Boston on Sunday. So if Wiggins is out, it will provide an opportunity for Moody to continue to get more run and continue to perform and continue to play at a high level. So good stuff tonight for Moses Moody. Kind of a rough fourth quarter for the Warriors, although they were never truly challenged. Warriors were up 23, immediately was cut to 15, then down to 12. Steve Kerr's burning timeouts. Couple of hustle plays from Podziemski, couple of drives from Curry, who got cooking in the second half after being held scoreless in the first. Curry ends up with 18 for the game and 18 in the second half. He ends up hitting a couple of threes. Rough stretch at the top of the fourth quarter from Dario Saric, and you just saw, I know Steve Kerr really wants to give Saric some run, and I think he'll continue to give Saric some run as Saric plays with Chris Paul and wants to give that 5-person group with TJD and Saric and Thompson and Chris Paul, wants to give them a look, whether Moody or Wiggins or Klay Thompson are in that group at different points. But I think when you look at it, Saric continues to struggle, even playing the 4. And so, I've said it over the last week. I mean, he can be a regular season player, and it's not going to kill you if he's only playing 13 minutes, to be honest, even if he's not playing well. And he was a -1. But he's somebody that opponents do look to attack. He's also somebody that I don't think necessarily is going to be a lock to be in a playoff rotation for the Warriors. And I've said that. And when things do get pared down, and certain groups and players individually are thought to be attacked and looked at more, then I think he becomes less playable in some of those instances. So all in all, nice win for the Warriors as they make it 6 in a row on the road. Again, we talked about 12-5 since January 24th. They wiped the bad taste away from the Denver game, and 11-3 since January the 30th. Nice nights for Moses Moody. Really nice return for those that were freaked out and concerned that Chris Paul was going to screw everything up. I give credit to Steve Kerr for playing him in that 20 to 25 minute range and not the 25 to 32 plus minute range. We'll see as they play some better opponents, in particular the Knicks and the Celtics, whether Kerr finds himself, really feeling like he wants to get him out there. But all in all, a nice win for Golden State as they improve on the season now to 30-27. Again, that 6th consecutive road win, and now you look up and they're playing good basketball away from Chase Center. Now 14-12 on the road. They get to 30-27, so plus 3 to 500. That moves them for the time being up to 9th in the Western Conference. They're able to move in front of the Lakers, although it is still a virtual tie. Warriors have the percentage points advantage, with the Lakers and the Warriors still to play 2 times in Southern California between now and the end of the regular season. So those two with a lot to sort out as far as is somebody going to get out of the 9-10 matchup as far as the play-in tournament goes. Both now have separated themselves from Utah 3.5 games off the pace, and now just 2.5 games off the pace against Dallas, 3 back of Sacramento, and 3.5 back, although 3 in the loss column for the Warriors of 5 and 6. I mean, 3.5, 3 in the loss column is a lot, I think, with 25 games to go, but it's not impossible, even with a number of teams and basically 4 teams in between where the Warriors are sitting at 9 and where the Warriors ultimately want to get to as far as potentially being 5 or 6. So 808 KNBR, the number. It's Dubs OT with JD here on the Sports Leader as things get going here on a Tuesday night following the Warriors and their big win as they get the job done 123-112 in Washington to get the road trip off on the right foot. We'll go ahead and pause here. We'll get to our question of the night. We got Sounds of Silver coming up. We'll have some fun with numbers as the Warriors get it done. It's KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.
Marcus Thompson, Oakland's very own of The Athletic, joined Murph and Marcus this morning to discuss Chris Paul's return, Brandon Pajemski's rookie minutes, the return to Washington and facing Jordan Poole, and much more. To hear that interview, see what's trending now on KNBR.com and the KNBR app.
OT with John Dickinson keeps rolling. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
Jared Butler dropping it off nicely. Oh, Pajemski with a block. Took it from Rashawn Holmes. Klay Thompson, three. He's on fire. This has been confirmed. Exhibit A. Feed that man. He's hungry. I mean, leave that graphic up. 51 bench points as Kuzma misses there. The bench has dominated this game.
Yeah, 51-11 at that point. It ends up 59-15 in terms of bench points with Klay Thompson leading the way, 25. You hear the Klay three there, one of 6 3-pointers. Klay, it was 6 of 9 from 3 at one point. He did take a couple heat checks down the stretch to finish 6 of 11, but all in all, really nice game for Klay and an excellent game for the new-look Warriors bench, basically featuring Chris Paul, Klay Thompson, a lot of Dario Saric, a little bit of GP2 mixed in there, Trace Jackson-Davis as well, but Paul and Thompson leading the way in Chris Paul's first game since January the 5th. So we welcome you back. It's Dubs OT with JD here on KNBR, the sports leader. 808 KNBR is the number. We will dig into the YouTube chat. Appreciate everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch here on a Tuesday night with the early start time. But let's get to the phones and get to Drew Down in Tracy tipping us off here on Dubs OT tonight. What's going on, Drew Down?
What's up, JD? I'm just chilling here, about to head out to my my little Tuesday night bowling league, but I had to tap in with you after the game before I left. Definitely an ugly start. You know, I don't know if the East Coast or first game early start had anything to do with that. Curry was obviously 0 for the half, but I thought J.K. and Moody in that first quarter definitely, their scoring kept us in it. And then I really like that CP3, Klay combo off the bench. I retweeted Tim Kawakami. I was asking, I was like, do you think with Chris Paul coming back and his acceptance of the bench role, do you think that helps Klay at all? And he said, I think they kind of help each other. That they're both veterans, they're both kind of in the same position, and they can kind of both feed off each other. Especially playing together. So I definitely like the early results from the CP3 Klay. I thought CP3 was great, dropping dimes everywhere. He just really helps calm down that bench unit, and I really love having him back. I bet Kerr does a lot too. GP2 was a menace on defense. I was kind of worried for a second when he had that steal. I thought he got hurt. He was kind of grabbing his abdomen midsection. I thought maybe, with the abductor and all that, but it turns out it might have just been a, little nut shot. But it seemed like he was okay. He saved the game, so happy to see he wasn't injured. I was definitely, a little worried, and actually I was a little worried for him because he's been through so much and he's been playing so well. So glad to see he didn't get, seriously injured. I thought Moody was great, had great energy. He had that one, just ankle breaker, sent him to the court, and then splashed 3 in his face. I thought that was that was good. And then yes, the bench overall was just like you had pointed out the advantage earlier, but the bench overall, the scoring was just amazing tonight, especially when Steph struggled. He did come in the second half and hit some big shots, but I don't know if I don't want to speculate if he's tired or whatever. Maybe he's just struggling, but he definitely came back in the second half and put up some buckets, help really put this game out of reach. I know it was the Wizards; they're not a great team, but doesn't matter. Get the W, and we definitely got a test versus the Knicks. So let's see if they can start 2-0 on this road trip. Thanks, JD.
Yeah, Drew Down, you got to handle business, and that's what the Warriors did. I mean, this is a game that absolutely under no circumstances could be a loss for the Warriors. And so, whether they won it by 2 or whether they won it by 25 or whether they end up winning it by 11, which is what they won it by, 123 to 112, it could not be a loss. And so for the Warriors to be able to find a way to get the job done and handle business. It was a bad start. Curry couldn't buy a bucket. I think the great news about a night like tonight where Curry couldn't buy a bucket is the fact that you won the game without Curry. The Warriors have now really won. You look at their record since the break, they're 3-1 since the All-Star break, and Curry overall has struggled. And so I think if you're the Warriors, you're thinking, hey, at some point, obviously, he's going to turn it around, and, but you don't want his bad games to cost you. And they cost him against Denver, but that's the defending champs, and that's a team that always is going to defend Curry, I think, as well as anybody in the league. So the fact that the Warriors, it looks like they're able to withstand the Curry struggles to be able to, get some wins here while he sorts through, and whether it's fatigue or just a slump. I mean, I know he talked about it the other night, the fact that it's just averages basically, and team players are going to go through slumps, and eventually he's going to get hot, and you average it all out, and the numbers are probably going to be pretty Curry-like at the end of the season. So yeah, he couldn't buy one. Kuminga really helped keep the Warriors rolling early. Moody, nice job. GP2, excellent floor game. I was worried about GP2. It looked like maybe something got tweaked there a little bit. Warriors continuing to keep him in that 18-minute range, which is just about perfect. 15 to 18 shorter stints, I think, to try and protect his body. But it was about the bench tonight. It was about Klay Thompson coming in and cooking and helping to flip the game. And, it was really the group. Saric didn't play well in the second half. Saric was part of that group with Klay and Moody and Trace Jackson-Davis and Chris Paul that Warriors got down 9, and you're thinking, man, what kind of night is this going to be? And then they hit, 4 threes in a row, and all of a sudden they really, in a lot of ways, never looked back from there. Never really played from a position of truly being threatened. So a lot of real good performances from the bench there. Scarecrow in Sacramento is next here on Dubs OT with JD on KNBR, the sports leader. What's going on, Scarecrow?
Realistically, the Warriors are fighting to get out of the play-in and into the playoffs. They're declining a little bit. And Father Time being undefeated, I couldn't help but notice Steve Kerr's contract sort of coinciding with Steph's. And, I'm happy to see them do well. I'm not real sure how far they're going to go in or what have you, but, is this the time when they sort of be able to ease out and maybe all four of them can all go out at the same time?
It's starting to feel like that's more of the plan, Scarecrow. I mean, especially now that you look at Draymond's deal, he's got the 2 more years plus a player option for the 3rd year beyond this year, so he's actually out a year even beyond Curry and Kerr. You've got Wiggins who's out a year even beyond Curry and Kerr. That was the cost of doing business. But yeah, Steph is aligned with Steve. Draymond's going to be there for that particular point in time. And I wonder, Scarecrow, if that, they offered Klay Thompson reportedly a 2-year deal. I think it may end up taking a 3-year deal to get Klay to come back, although the numbers I think maybe he'd be more willing to accept. But I think you're right, and we're going to play Steve Kerr in the pregame press conference coming up a little bit later here on Dubs OT. He addressed the contract extension, which actually became official this afternoon. And, just kind of paraphrasing him, because we'll play the full comment later, it just, he thought it made a lot of sense, just to, a couple more years and then reevaluate where everybody is at that point, whether it's a full-blown rebuild or maybe the younger players are playing at all-star caliber level and the Warriors have some action there. We won't know until it all kind of shakes out. But it does seem like there's more of a stability now between, all right, you know what Steph can bring, and Draymond's playing still pretty well, and Steve's now signed. Can you get Klay to be the final piece to that? And I think it for the first time, Scarecrow, it's also looking like the young players actually fit. With the veteran players, which has been such a clunky part of the deal here these last couple of years. So, yeah, I don't know what the ceiling is for this team. It might end up being pretty similar to last year, where they get in as a lower seed and they maybe win one round and then get beat in the second round by a team that goes on to, be a more legitimate title contender. But either way, it feels more stable than it did a month ago, than it did 8-9 months ago when this team went out in the playoffs in 2023.
Well, Father Time is undefeated, and to be perfectly honest with you, it's they're getting a little as somebody said, working the back nine right now.
Oh yeah.
It would be it would behoove Mr. Dunleavy and all the Warrior Brain Trust really consider the possibility of life without Steve Kerr, life without Steph and Klay and Draymond. I mean, as much as we'd like for them to be there forever, the problem with being a ball player is they have a short shelf life. They have given us much, and it may be time that, we start looking and seeing what all we've got and what all we're going to need. Maybe not necessarily, maybe, for the future here, we're going to be looking at teams that are fighting like crazy to get into the playoffs as opposed to fighting like crazy to get themselves a championship. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, is it?
No, I don't think it's a bad thing if your younger players are growing up and becoming kind of a next wave. Like I think, you're not going to compete. And thanks, Scarecrow, appreciate the call. You're not going to compete for championships every single year. And but I do think there was a question as to the viability of keeping the three plus Steve Kerr, Steph, Klay, Draymond together plus Steve Kerr. I think there was a question about, how long could you really do that? Do you need to maybe do more of a pronounced rebuild? And I think, now you're comfortable at least with them being the foundational pieces for a couple of more years. Like, I don't think the Warriors are in a hurry now to break it up necessarily before a couple of years down the road. And I still think it's going to be a year-to-year proposition. I think, this year, if things had continued to go the way things were going, a month ago, I think, we might be having a different conversation about Steve Kerr. We might be having a different conversation. I mean, a month ago, it looked like there's no way in hell that Klay Thompson was going to be able and willing to return if he truly believed that he was still a player that was, closer to a max player than closer to a bench player. And so, but since then, he's been accepting of, at least it's been reported, and again, I don't think he likes coming off the bench, but he's rolling with it enough, and the Warriors have put him in a position where he's at least accepted enough, and he's been productive enough with it to where it's continued to help the team have success with Podziemski going into the starting lineup there. So, I think there's just a little more hope that you can continue than there was a month ago. Like, it looked very bleak. It looked like, Kuminga's turning himself into something, Podziemski's nice, but what are they really as far as a future standalone core? I think we don't still know the answer to that as far as the Warriors' younger players, but it's less important because Steph is playing at the level that he is, and Klay's maybe more accepting of a lesser role than it seemed like he would be. And Draymond has, at least for the time being, potentially turned over a new leaf as far as, being able to control his emotions and stay on the court. 808 KNBR, the number. It's Dubs OT with JD here on The Sports Leader. Warriors win tonight 123-112 over the Washington Wizards. Game 1 of the 4-game road trip. Stops in New York, Toronto, and Boston to come. Let's get back to the phone lines and go to Irv in Berkeley, who's next here on The Sports Leader. What's going on tonight, Irv?
Hey, I want to ask a question. Like, we give Steve Kerr a lot of credit as a coach and the Warrior ownership for being like light years ahead of everybody. So why haven't they adjusted to bringing in big men? Because against Denver the other day, if we have a big man, I'm not going to say he's going to stop Jokic, but at least that'll stop, like, where we can get some rebounds, a little bit of rim protection, and we don't have none of that. And Draymond is not a rim protector. He's a good help defender. He's not a good on-ball defender. And I just want to know why the Warriors haven't adjusted to bringing a big man in.
Well, I think the biggest part of it, and this question comes up a lot, Irv, and we talk about it a lot. I think the biggest thing is there aren't a lot of quality big men. And the teams that have quality big men, and I mean quality big men, I'm talking Jokic, who obviously isn't going anywhere, Embiid, who isn't going anywhere. I think of Anthony Davis. I think of Domantas Sabonis in Sacramento, who's a nice big man, had some playoff struggles in his career. But there aren't a lot of just big men that you feel like you would be wanting to have them on the floor and taking minutes away from basically Draymond now, who the Warriors have determined is their center. And here's the other part of it, and I'll let you jump back into this. It also becomes, if you're going to get some just middling big man, then you're not going to play Looney, and you're not going to play Trace Jackson-Davis. And Draymond, if this guy's going to play over Draymond, then Draymond's going to play the 4. Now you found something in Kuminga here the last couple months with Kuminga playing the 4. Kuminga they don't view as a 3. So then if you're playing this big, then where does Kuminga fit into it? And so like all of a sudden he's maybe playing less. And so it creates this trickle-down effect, Irv, of is the big man that you're going to get substantial enough, quality enough of a player to basically alter the rest of how you want to operate and how you want to function. And I think the Warriors have just determined that there isn't a quality enough guy out there to be able to change everything up in that manner.
Okay, I get that if that's the direction you're going, but I see Looney out there a lot, and I see Looney pump faking 1,000 times. He's not giving us no offense. I don't care about, I always hear, oh, he can stick a guard. I don't want my big man sticking a guard. I want my big man blocking the shot, being a defensive pro. The Warriors they have enough offense. They don't have nobody that can be a stopper. And I'm talking about someone like a Dwight Howard or maybe a Noel Nolan, someone that can.
Well, and I'll say this, Irv, if you're talking about somebody that's going to play maybe 5 minutes a half, then I think we can have a conversation there, like, hey, maybe, and I think the Warriors would love to have a big that had a little bit more, versatile, can clog the paint some, but also had a versatile, maybe inside scoring game a little bit. But the other issue that I think they've run into, and I think Dwight Howard's the perfect example, is, Dwight Howard wants to play 20, 25 minutes a game. And a lot of these, the Warriors would be like, you know what, you're going to play maybe 10 minutes a game only when we play Embiid or Sabonis or Jokic or Anthony Davis. And that becomes something that isn't appealing to some of those players that are looking to get more run. So it's tricky.
It just sucks to see that. And I'm going to go with this one. This will be my last thing. I just don't think Steve Kerr can coach big men. And that was evident when he brought the guy, the Jackson from Memphis. He was the only big in the U.S. What is that? Whatever those Olympic Games or whatever it is. Okay, yeah, they were too small. And Jackson isn't a physical center. He's like Draymond. He's a help defender, but he's not going to do nothing on ball. But a help defender, he's great. And they ate us alive. So that's the problem that I have.
Yeah.
And
well,
I think it's scary.
I think it's a fair point, Irv. Appreciate the call, man. We're up against it a little bit. We're going to pause here. But, look, I think it's a fair conversation if you want to talk about somebody playing 5 minutes a half. Because basically you look at Kevon Looney, and you look at Looney tonight, Kevon Looney played 10 minutes. So he played 5 minutes a half. And Trace Jackson-Davis is getting 4 or 5 minutes a half. Excuse me. And Draymond is getting the bulk of those center minutes. But there's also the trickle-down effect of, if you're going to play somebody else at that center spot that's quality, well, then where are you going to play Draymond? And Draymond's one of your best and most important players. So it's not as simple as, just going and finding a bit. If there was somebody good, if there was somebody skilled enough, then I think the Warriors would be more open to it. But they, at least to this point, haven't been able to find the kinds of players that are really worthy of it. Robin Lopez, does he do anything for you? No, like, you want to play Robin Lopez 5 minutes a half instead of Looney? You want to play Nerlens Noel 5 minutes a half instead of Looney? You want to play Dwight Howard 5 minutes a half instead of Looney? Like, is that really going to change the game against an Embiid or a Jokic or an Anthony Davis? I mean, we can have a conversation about it. I just don't think it. I don't think it matters that much, and you're not going to be playing that dude more in Draymond's slot, because if you're playing him in Draymond's slot, then that means Kuminga is getting bumped down and not playing, and it just creates a lot of problems overall in terms of your overall roster construction and roster flexibility. All right, we'll pause here. 808 KNBR is the number. We still will get to our question of the night here as the Warriors win against Washington 123-112. It's Dubs OT with JD here on a Tuesday night. We've got Sounds of Silver coming up. We've got our Fun with Numbers segment as well. And Steve Kerr also addressed his contract extension, which did become official, the 2-year contract extension. That announcement formally came down right around 1 o'clock this afternoon after the reports on Friday that it would ultimately get done. So we'll get into all of that as we keep things rolling here. It's Dubs OT with JD, KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
blue and gold. This is Dubs OT with John Dickinson on the Sports Leader. Streaming live at KNBR.com and on the KNBR app.
Chris Paul. How does this guy miss 21 games and come back and play this well? No rust. 6 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, has a steal. People are like, you think Chris Paul will make a difference when he's healthy? Yes.
Yes, indeed. Chris Paul making a big difference. Warriors win 123-112. It's Dubs OT with JD here on KNBR, the sports leader. 808 KNBR, the number. You can give us a call or shoot us a text. Appreciate everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch as well, as the Warriors now 30-27. It's 6 consecutive road wins for the first time since the 2018-2019 season. And the Warriors are playing well. 12-5 since January 24th. They're 11-3 since the double OT loss and the back-to-back one-point losses to the Lakers and the Kings there on the 25th and 27th of January. And this team playing much better basketball. The pieces are falling into place. Warriors get the job done tonight without Andrew Wiggins due to a personal matter. He sat this game out. Hope, obviously, all is well with Wiggins, but Chris Paul back in the rotation. 22 minutes for Chris Paul, highly impactful, plus 17, quarterbacking that bench group, and 9 points to go with 4 boards and 6 assists and 4 steals in the game for Chris Paul. So impressive stuff from CP3. Klay Thompson leads the way for the Warriors as he ends up with 25, leading Golden State in scoring. Jonathan Kuminga, 21, and kind of the perfect Jonathan Kuminga game. 21 on 10 of 13 with everything basically at the rim. He did not attempt a three-pointer, but it was all dunks. It was all transition. It was all cuts for the most part. Couple of early post-up, turnaround ISOs. But as we talked about at the top of the show, I'm all right with Kuminga looking against lesser opponents and what I call opponents in terms of the Washington Wizards have a lot of young players that are trying to find their way in the NBA, and Jonathan Kuminga is as talented or more talented than any of those players. So yeah, look to go get it against Corey Kispert and Landry Shamet and Jordan Poole and Jared Butler and guys like that. Like that's the night to maybe look to be a little bit more aggressive, but he didn't have to be, frankly, in this game other than the early going because everything was basically a dunk or at the rim. So 808 KNBR, the number to give me a call or shoot me a text here on the phone lines. We do have a couple of phone lines open. Appreciate everybody chiming in here on the text line as well. The Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line open here, 408. I haven't mentioned Jordan Poole to this point in the show, but the 408 chiming in. So sweet seeing Jordan Poole on the worst team in the NBA, not helping them get wins. Poole is a joke. Wow. I didn't think a lot of Warrior fans carried that level for Jordan Poole, considering the fact that he did help Golden State win an NBA championship less than 2 years ago. But, yeah, he got paid, he got punched, and then things got a little bit weird. But I think if you look at Jordan Poole's tenure to this point with Washington, I think the one thing where the Warriors were right on the money is the evaluation, regardless of how or why it got weird and whether it was his fault that it got weird and he declined last year and how much of it had to do with the punch, which basically was not his fault. The Warriors looked at the contract that they gave him and said, we got to get off of this. We got to get away from this contract. And they were able to do it in acquiring Chris Paul. And I think, make no mistake, the Warriors have been better for it to this point. And financially, could you imagine if Jordan Poole, and I'm not sure with the Warriors he would have continued to decline at the level that started last year and has really continued. I mean, he's been benched by the Wizards now. I mean, he's coming off the Wizards bench, and you look at Poole tonight. I mean, 12 points, 5 of 17. Again, just 29 minutes and just ugly.
Champion of change.
Ugly line for Jordan Poole, but you give the Warriors credit for getting off of that contract before it got to a point where you couldn't get off of it, because they would be in some financial hell right now if they had kept that contract around, and honestly may have been forced to have to make another move because they wouldn't have been able to make the move to move on from him. So, yeah, I don't necessarily carry that level of vitriol as the 408 does, but I'm sure he's not alone, he or she. They are not alone in that thought as to, just kind of being frustrated and done with what the Jordan Poole experience turned into over the course of last season, and obviously playing very poorly in the playoffs, as many of the Warriors did. So 808 KNBR is the number. 808 KNBR as the Warriors win it 123-112. It is Dubs OT with JD here on the Sports Leader. Warriors now 30-27 on the season. The win and the nightly flip-flop between the Warriors and the Lakers. The win puts the Warriors now in 9th in the Western Conference. And look, every position gives you a little bit more of an advantage over the last position, right? I mean, 10, you got to win a road game or you're done. 9, you at least get a home game, even though you got to win 2. And if you're 9 or 10, you got to win 2 to get to what would be the 8th spot, which would be the highest point that you can get to, if you are the 9 or the 10. And the Warriors still are, 2.5 out of 8, but you get to 8, and then you only got to win 1 if you get to 8 by the end of the regular season, and you get a road game to try and steal the 7. You get a home game to try to hang on to the 8 if you can't win the road game to get the 7. And then obviously if you're the 7, you get 2 home games to win 1, basically as the 7 or the 8 seed. And so every mark up gives you a better opportunity. From 10 to 9 to 8 to 7. Obviously, if you can get to 6, you wind up in a position where you're guaranteed, as the Warriors were last year. They got to 6 in the final day of the regular season, and that got them a full best-of-7 series against the Sacramento Kings. Now, getting to 6th is a different animal than getting to 6th last year. You get to 6th this year, and you're looking at Denver, and 39-19 currently defending champions, and we've seen how that matchup has been so difficult for the Warriors, now losing 7 straight and unable to beat Denver over the course of these last 2 seasons. So keeping things rolling here on the Sports Leader. Let's dive into the YouTube chat as well, as we appreciate everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch here on a Tuesday night. We'll bring in the great Greg Silver here coming up momentarily, get his initial thoughts on this one. We've got Sounds of Silver. We got fun with numbers, a lot of good numbers to get into. Rockin' new era, 5 years. Yeah, the Warriors have not won 6 in a row on the road in 5 years. 2018, 2019, back in the old Kevin Durant era for the Warriors, when they were going to 5 straight NBA Finals back from 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. But yeah, it's a nice win for the Warriors all in all. The bench really doing a nice job, and really the headliner tonight going into the game was, how's Chris Paul going to look? How is that bench group going to look? And yeah, you're playing the worst team in the NBA, but it looked exactly like you wanted it to look, and there's still some room to be able to I think, tinker with it a little bit. And so, that is, rebel to sounds. Warriors got the win after nearly blowing a 20-point lead. What did it get down to, Greg? What did it get down to? 11, 10? Was the closest they got 11 in the 9, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I think 9. I do remember thinking it got to single digits at one point when I was facing off with Tolbert and Copes.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at it right now. In the fourth quarter, it got down to 12, and it got down to 11 with 4:07 to go. It got down to 11, and that was it. It got down to 10 in the final minute, but everybody had been pulled from the game at that point. So it got down to 11 when the Warriors still had everybody in the game with about 2:28 to go, was the most, the closest to the end of the game that had gotten down to 11. So
it felt like 9.
It felt like 9, which feels like 4. So this game, I don't think the Warriors I don't think you can say, looking at and Rebel, we appreciate you. I don't think you can say tonight that the Warriors won the game after nearly blowing a 20-point lead when as close as the Wizards got was 11 before the game was basically called. Douglas Mikes, we'll get your thought on this. Bad win, but there shouldn't be a reason Lester plays over Moody. Yeah, again, we've talked about the apples to apples component to that. I mean, it's not apples to apples. I mean, Quinones didn't play tonight because Chris Paul was back. And while Quinones has not really played the point guard when he's been out there, he's been the player whose minutes were opened up by the Warriors basically going in on Pajemski at a higher level and no longer having Corey Joseph on the roster. And so Quinones got an opportunity with Chris Paul out to play. And Steve Kerr said before the ball game that those minutes are going away for Quinones, basically with Chris Paul back. And that was what I did toy around with, excuse me, Greg, making the question of the night, which is just how does Steve Kerr balance the rotation now with Chris Paul back, and Klay Thompson's coming off the bench. Moses Moody, I think, made a case, as he often does, to continue to be a part of things and get opportunities to play, but how do you do it? Moody played tonight because Andrew Wiggins was unavailable. And so I don't think it's always as simple as, well, give Moody a few of Wiggins' minutes and give Moody a few of Pajemski's minutes, because then it changes some of the 5 player groups that are out there on the floor together and changes some of the balance. So it's much easier when somebody's just taken out of the equation to say, okay, now I'm going to fill that player in, and I know I can give him a start, as Steve Kerr did, and know that he can give him an opportunity to get at least 20 to 25 minutes. And Moses Moody showed out. 23 minutes, 12 points, knocked down 4 threes. He was making hustle plays. I thought it was a really good Moses Moody game. But, Greg, I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that as we continue to roll through the YouTube chat. Just where do the Warriors go, and how does Steve Kerr kind of balance the fact that he's found something with this Chris Paul, Klay Thompson thing? He's still committed to Trayce Jackson-Davis and Saric. Maybe Moody becomes the 5th with that group, but again, I feel like you want to be able to give him closer to 20. If it doesn't help to give him 5 minutes each half as much as it would be knowing that you could give him 20, and I just don't know that there's 20 to give him with everybody healthy and available, especially now since Chris Paul's back in the fold.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it was kind of like how we had the 1-game sample size of Klay Thompson coming off the bench when he scored 35 and it looked great. We had all that for a week. Now we have another 1-game sample size of Klay Thompson and Chris Paul coming off the bench together as a backcourt. And it looked great, but they played against the Wizards, and I'd like to think it's going to be a nice long-term fit, but we've really only seen just a little bit of it so far. So I'll give you some of my thoughts on what I saw tonight, and then I'll kind of do a slight pivot of the question to get it back to you. So first off, I thought if Steph Curry having a bad game and Chris Paul looking nice off the bench, like if that's your biggest concern, which is Steph Curry struggling as of late, then that's exactly what you want your concern to be. Like that is not an issue for the Warriors to assume that Curry is going to be slumping this level through April and possibly the play-in / postseason. So I thought that was nice. I think Klay Thompson looks to be in a good mental space. You know, I know he's kind of saying a lot of the right things about embracing the bench role. I think that, like Drew Down was talking about, Chris Paul and Klay Thompson sort of being able to be in that together as two Hall of Famers in the later stages of their career, coming off the bench and helping their team win. I think that's good for both of them. And I'm looking forward to seeing this unit try to thrive a little bit more as they continue to coexist. I thought Moses Moody did look nice, as he usually does. He's, to his credit, he's always been someone that's ready to go when his number is called upon. And we'll hear some sound a little bit later from Steve Kerr in Sounds of Silver talking about just that. The question I kind of want to ask you, JD, in regards to Chris Paul's return is, who is this going to help the most? Because it's pretty clear that it should help Klay Thompson. I think Dario Saric is the obvious one where he's borderline unplayable without Chris Paul, but then when he's out there with Chris Paul, he's a completely different player. And then the one that's kind of gone under the radar to me a little bit is I actually think it helps Brandon Pajemski. And that is because when you're a rookie, you hit a little bit of a rookie wall sometimes. Pajemski has overachieved in so many ways to help this Warriors roster. And now he's playing a lot of minutes. It is catching up to him a little bit. He is on other teams' scouting report. You saw what it was like for him to go against a team the caliber of Denver and how he struggled a little bit. I think if you can just shave off 5 Pajemski minutes every night and have Chris Paul take some of the load, it is a well-timed return. And I know that there are certain parts of the Chris Paul return that are going to be difficult for everybody, including Pajemski. Like, what do they do at the closing lineups? More dilemmas for Steve Kerr on a night-in, night-out basis. Tough to maintain the kind of flow that maybe the Warriors were seeing in this last 14-game stretch when they were 11-3. But overall, I think this could be much more of a good thing and a positive than a negative for somebody like Pajemski, who is hitting a little bit of a rookie wall here in late February.
No doubt. And I think, you look at the starting lineup with Pajemski in it, 6-1 now, with although I guess it's not with Wiggins because Moody started, so that this was a different starting lineup for the Warriors tonight. I had the note here earlier, 18th different starting lineup for the Warriors, with Moody making his 5th start. Warriors are 4-1 when Moody starts, and he's coming into the game was averaging 14 points per game in those starts. He got 12 tonight, so it goes down a little bit, but all in all, still in that same realm of basically around 13 points per game, 13 to 14 points per game. So he's been productive, and look, he pretty much is always productive when he's called upon. I'm with you on the one thing that I don't want to see, and I think Steve Kerr has to be careful, is just all right, Chris Paul's going to finish with Steph and Klay and then, maybe Kuminga and Draymond, right? Because that's where I think you end up a little too small. Being too small isn't necessarily about not having a big man. The Warriors at times are too small in the backcourt, and at times they're too small at the 3-4 spots. And I think a big part of the reason why the Warriors have been able to have the success that they've had, Greg, is that Kuminga and Wiggins, with Kuminga at the 4 and Wiggins at the 3, that is sturdy. Those are NBA 4 and NBA 3 legitimate wing body types, legitimate wing skill sets, right? Wing and power forward in today's game, power forward skill sets as far as Kuminga is concerned. So when you start, it's kind of like the conversation about adding another big, right? If you add another big, then Draymond gets bumped, and then what does it mean for Kuminga and all that? If you start playing Chris Paul too much at the end of games, it's one, and then you also are going to have Klay Thompson. Then all of a sudden you're choosing between Wiggins or Kuminga at the 4, so you're either too small at the 3 and the 2, if because you don't have Wiggins out there, or you're finding yourself too small in the backcourt because you're basically going to play Steph and Chris Paul in the backcourt, and that lineup, the Chris Paul, Steph, Klay 1, 2, 3 has really been problematic for this team this season. That's been a lineup that I think they've probably gone to a lot, and it hasn't worked more often than it has in a lot of the clutch situations.
Yeah, I think to reiterate some of our thoughts on our Just Dubs show from Saturday, Chris Paul closing should not be a default. I think Pajemski has earned the right to close a handful of games, and him not closing shouldn't be based just around, Chris Paul's backing off the injury report. Like, Pajemski's fully earned the right to close some games out here. And the thing is, I would say you absolutely want to have the luxury of closing with Draymond, Wiggins, and Kuminga, because even though you don't have a true 5 out there, you have a true 3, a true 4, and a very unique defender that allows you to play the small lineup. And since he's come back, the defense has been unlocked in a whole new form. So that's 3 of your spots. Well, Steph is obviously going to take a 4th spot. So now you're leaving 1 spot for either Klay Thompson, Brandon Pajemski, Chris Paul, or Moses Moody. And I don't think Chris Paul is just a default filler in that situation necessarily. Now, I will say I would like to see Chris Paul out there for stretches of the 4th quarter when the Warriors are trying to protect a lead, because that's when they've crumbled and fallen apart so much, and that's when you've seen a 12-point lead become a 3-point lead in a matter of seconds. That doesn't necessarily mean Chris Paul has to be out there on the very final possessions of a game, but there are situations where you'd absolutely like to see Chris Paul out there, and I think he should be an important 4th quarter piece. However, again, it's not, Chris Paul's off the injury report, so we're going to play him fully down the stretch and alongside Steph, and then ask a lot of Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond in terms of defending.
Yeah, it was kind of a default, I feel like, for Steve Kerr to just, all right, I trust Chris Paul, and it happened at the end of the first half tonight. The final couple of minutes, it was Curry with Klay and Chris Paul, and it was Kuminga and Draymond Green, and look, all of those guys were playing well with the exception of Curry, and Curry's going to be out there regardless. He was 0 for 7 and 0 for 6 from 3 and didn't score in the first half. But, he's obviously not going to be somebody that's going to get benched in a clutch situation or an end of half, type situation, unless he's in, big time foul trouble or something like that. But I think it's the balance there. And look, tonight it's easier to do because Wiggins was unavailable. So it all right, and Klay is hot. So, but it almost only has to be, in my mind, Greg, nights where, like, Chris Paul was really good tonight. Steph is Steph. Klay Thompson was really good tonight. Kuminga was excellent tonight. Draymond is Dre. Like, I almost only want to see that group on the nights where everybody is the green check mark. Like clear cut, playing well. That's the best 5. Klay's hot. Chris Paul's organizing things. But the other part of it, too, is you can get away with it. And part of the reason you can get away with it is because of who you're playing against. And that is, the Washington Wizards, which I don't want to completely snuff out any of the significance of what the Warriors were able to do tonight. But they did it against, Washington, which, is a little different animal than if you're trying to play some of these lineups against, say, Denver.
Yeah, and by the way, there's one other player which I didn't mention in that 5th closing spot, and that's Gary Payton II, who you're probably not going to see close 7 straight minutes, but he is a very much viable option for a spot substitute late in games down the stretch, and that's another guy that can go and get in there. And I actually saw in the chat from Irwin, one of our devotees and regulars. He's talking about 21 minutes for Chris Paul tonight, and that's about what I think he should be getting. I think that's pretty much in line with where our discussions have gone over the last week, both on and off the air, where, yeah, Chris Paul having that level of impact in 21 minutes was incredible. And I know you're not going to get to play the Washington Wizards every night, but to me, it felt like Chris Paul played 30 minutes out there when you account for the struggle Steph Curry was having, when you account for the way Klay Thompson heated up in that third quarter. But he really only played 21, and it allowed a nice balance for guys like Moses Moody to get the most of their opportunity and Jonathan Kuminga to really fully be himself out there. I thought it was really nice to see from Chris Paul and refreshing in the sense that he was back. His impact was felt, but he didn't just completely take over all rotations down the stretch.
All right, 808 KNBR is the number. It's Dubs OT with JD, John Dickinson here on the Sports Leader. Greg Silver on hand as well. Sounds of Silver coming up between now and 9 o'clock as we keep this thing rolling here as the Warriors get the win 123-112. We'll dive back into the YouTube chat as well. We got some texts piling in, some text messages as we will roll through the Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line. Warriors win it by 11. It's KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.
Hoops Heads. Dubs OT with John Dickinson keeps balling. Streaming live at twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
Bottled up there with Charlotte. Shot clock at 10. Chris Paul to Trace Jackson Davis. And you knew you'd be seeing that. That's what everyone on the Warriors wanted to see. Trace Jackson Davis rolling off of a Chris Paul pick and roll. He's going to find him, throw it up high, let him go get it.
All right, CP3, Trace Jackson Davis, another one of the components that I think a lot of Warrior fans were looking to see. How would Trace Jackson Davis fit with Chris Paul? Chris Paul, obviously known for making the most out of lob threats. And, it's so funny. You've got the Warriors who've kind of figured out this semblance of what they want their bench group to be, but it's all contingent on what they can get out of Chris Paul to kind of lead it along now with Klay Thompson. Does it wind up being CP3 with Klay? Saric and Trace Jackson Davis, I think, are two real nice players. Jackson Davis because of the lob threat. Saric because he's played so well with Chris Paul during his career, and that can be kind of a pick and roll, pick and pop kind of a threat. And then, pick your fifth, basically, between Moody or GP2 or Klay Thompson or Andrew Wiggins, who could be the three in that group as well. Discussing that here as we welcome you back. It's Dubs OT with JD here on KNBR, the sports leader. Warriors win tonight over the Wizards, 123-112 in Washington. So Golden State now 6 in a row on the road. We talked about it earlier. First time in 5 years that the Warriors have won 6 in a row away from Chase or Oracle. Last time they won the 5 in a row, they were still playing at Oracle over in Oakland. And so the Warriors get the road trip off on the right foot with games to still come Thursday night in New York, Friday in Toronto, and then Sunday afternoon, the showdown game. Always fun when the Warriors and Celtics play, especially in Boston. That's always a great game. Seems like it's been an ABC Saturday night showcase game a lot. It's going to be an ABC Sunday afternoon showcase game coming up this Sunday to close out the 4-game trip before the Warriors are able to come home. And then they got some games to win at home with Milwaukee coming in. Tough task there. Chicago, San Antonio. But the Warriors' ability to get on a run here now, when you look at 3-1 since the All-Star break, 25 games to go. And a lot of the conversation, could this team go 21-8? Could this team go 22-7? What was realistic? 20-9 was kind of what I thought was probably the ceiling for this Warriors team as far as those final 29. Well, they're 3-1 now in the first 4 of that 25. And so, you take that off the 20-9, and it's, can you go 17-8 in the last 25? And I think 17-8 seems, Greg, like it's pretty plausible at this point. I know you had a higher number than I did as far as the final 29. I think did you have 22 of the final 29? I think I stopped at 20.
Yes, I did.
I think you went to 22. But for the purposes of this conversation, as far as the ability to, 17-8 between now and the end of the year, that would get the Warriors to 47 wins. 17-8 feels doable with this team, basically playing at that level, 12-5 since January the 24th.
Yeah, I mean, again, a lot of my 22 had more to do with looking at the rest of the West. I think I saw this morning it was this morning or last night that Phoenix, Dallas, New Orleans, Sacramento all had 24 losses, and that was seeds 5 through 8. So 2 of those would end up in the play-in right now. So I think when I look at the 22-7, it was more just thinking about getting out of that dreaded play-in. And again, we talk about a team like Sacramento because I know that that's a team that is, close here geographically and, close to both of our hometowns. In fact,
I went and saw them last night. I went and saw them lose to Miami, shorthanded Miami, with Jimmy Butler and others watching the game at a restaurant near the hotel because of their suspensions. And it was basically the Heat did to the Kings what they did to the Warriors back in December when they didn't have anybody and they basically dominated the game for a half plus.
I thought that was a really funny tweet when you responded to the person who said the Heat were looking out for the Warriors and helped them in the standings, and you're like, kind of like exactly what they did in December when they had nobody and beat the Warriors at Chase. So that was a good one, but. It's just like I think Sacramento has had a pretty similar season to what we saw last year.
Yeah, they have.
But they were the 3 seed last year with 48 wins, and now they're fighting to get out of the play-in because you look at the rest of the Western competition. So I think when I say 22 out of the last 29, a lot of that is just thinking and looking at what the rest of the West has become.
Yeah, and I think 48, and I've said this, I think 48 is the magic number. So I guess I should probably have amended mine to say 21 and 8, because 21 and 8 would have been the number to get to 48 and 34. And look, that's not a guarantee by any stretch, especially with the Warriors having to make up some ground on the rest of that group. But yeah, coming into play tonight. Dallas got beat tonight, so Dallas took their 25th loss. They are the only of that group of 4. As I look, actually, no, the Pelicans won tonight at New York, so they played tonight at Madison Square Garden. So the Warriors are going to follow the Pelicans into Madison Square Garden. The Pelicans won tonight, 115-92, so they got a win to improve to 34 and 24. But yeah, Phoenix did not play tonight. As I'm kind of looking around the schedule here, Dallas got beat in Cleveland tonight as well, and it was a Strus, beyond half court buzzer beater basically, and what winds up being a huge tipping point. Kind of a game. That's a big L for Dallas to take among that group that's chasing them, and the Warriors and Lakers and the Pelicans and Kings who are moved up a notch because of that L.
Yeah, Max Strus seemed to help the Warriors more than the Heat did, because he didn't hit a half-court buzzer beater against the Warriors.
No, he did not. And so, yeah, wild ending there. After P.J. Washington had hit a layup for Dallas to put them up by 1. Strus with just an incredible shot to win the game, 121-119, the final with that one in Cleveland tonight. So, yeah, the Warriors now just 2.5 back of the Mavs. And, look, the Warriors and Mavs are going to be playing each other, and they're going to be playing each other a lot, 3 more times. The Warriors and the Mavs down the stretch here, including coming up in, looks like about 2 weeks. 2 weeks from tomorrow in Dallas, the Warriors take on the Mavs, and then the final couple of weeks of the season in early April, there's the makeup game, one of the games that was postponed due to the passing of Coach Decky. They're going to make that game up on April 2nd at Chase Center, a Tuesday night. And then the Warriors and Mavs were going to play on that Tuesday night in Dallas as part of what was going to be a 7-game road trip for the Warriors. They end up flipping that game to April 5th. And so the Warriors are basically the 7-game road trip, Greg. I'm not sure you probably have noticed this, but for those who haven't, the 7-game road trip became a 5-game road trip where the Warriors come home just to play the home game against the Mavs, and then they go right back on the road to Texas after that in Houston and Dallas, which is a back-to-back. And so basically what was going to be 5 or 7 in a row becomes a 7 of 8 with an added back-to-back in the mix and an added flight halfway across the country when the Warriors will go from San Antonio home to play the Mavs back to Houston, and then to Dallas there before coming back to play the final week of the season. Point I'm getting at is the Warriors are going to have every opportunity to catch and pass Dallas in terms of head-to-head matchups.
They will also have every opportunity to let things slip like they did in the first half of the season. So I don't mean to get overly off topic, but because I'm talking to you, I think you're actually going to remember exactly what I'm talking about, given your attention to detail. Obviously, what happened with the schedule on the second half of this year was unplanned and due to very tragic circumstances that the schedule hopefully did not have to accommodate for. Do you remember? I'm trying to think what year it was. I want to say 2017, maybe that first year with Kevin Durant, where the Warriors had that crazy schedule where they had a long road trip, came home for one game against Boston, and then went back on the road for another 5 games or something.
Oh, yeah, vaguely. I want to say it was 2017 or 2018.
Yeah, I think it was the first Durant year, so 17.
2017. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Was it in March? Was it kind of around March?
Yeah, it was during that stretch when KD was out after he got injured, actually in Washington, so where they played tonight.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm looking back at it. No, I'm not doing this off the top of my head. I'm looking back at it. It was 6 years ago tomorrow was that night in Washington on the 28th of February. And so, yeah, the Warriors played at Philly, at Washington. It was at Philly, at Washington, at Chicago. And then they were at New York, at Atlanta, came home and played the Celtics, and then went right back out and played Minnesota and San Antonio on the road. But, yeah, it was a one-off home game against the Celtics before they went right back and played Minnesota and San Antonio. So count all of those up. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-game road trip, basically in 8 nights, and then the one game in San Francisco. They flew from Atlanta, I guess, back to San Francisco, but then to Oakland. And so, so they played the one game against the Celtics and then went right back to Minneapolis and then down to San Antonio, because remember, there were a couple of times that the Warriors had a back-to-back, and this was one of those instances where the Warriors had a back-to-back where they would go either Minnesota to San Antonio or San Antonio to Minnesota. That happened multiple times, and so this was one of those times. Yeah, good. It's a good memory there, Greg.
I remember Steve Kerr
or 7 years ago.
7 years ago, yeah, that's 7. I remember Steve
lost
Kerr,
a year there.
He commented that was the worst scheduling he'd ever been a part of in his career.
Yeah, that was insane, and I know they've tried to do a lot of things to fix that with, more home back-to-backs, more of the baseball style little 2-game series where teams will come in, and the Warriors didn't have any of these on the road, but the Warriors have had a couple of teams, Houston and not Houston, Minnesota and Oklahoma City back in November had 2-game sets where they played back-to-back games at Chase, but the Warriors don't have any of those on the road. And what I've found is that a lot of the higher-profile teams don't typically. It's harder for the league to schedule those for those teams because so many of certain matchups are guaranteed to be nationally televised games. So in essence, it's you couldn't tell the Warriors, hey, you're going to play, both of your games, pick both of your games in Phoenix are going to be, back-to-backs because ESPN wants one of them and and TNT wants the other one, or ABC wants. So it makes it harder for those teams to have those types of back-to-backs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think I'm glad they don't have to replicate that 7 years ago. I shouldn't have even brought that up. I feel so much older now, and I'm 24.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I'm a little older than 24, so it's that felt like that when I hit the when I said 6 years, then I was like, oh my God, it was 7. That I think a little piece of me died there, Greg. I think a little piece of me went away. I do want to reset our Dubs OT question of the night here on Dubs OT. It's John Dickinson, Greg Silver here on the Sports Leader. Warriors won tonight. And they got a little help from Cleveland in the Western Conference standings. Warriors do win 123-112. We'll reset everything coming up here at the top of the 8 o'clock hours. We are going to keep things going all the way until 9 o'clock here tonight with the early game, and we got rolling right around 6:15 or so here on Dubs OT. Greg bridged the gap with a little face-off with Copes and Tolbert.
Toughest 10 minutes of my life.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you never know, right? Like that's the beauty of some of these games. These Western Conference or these in the West, these 4 o'clock games. You never know. You might be on at 6:10, and we were on pretty close to 6:10 tonight, and it might be 6:40.
Well, if we didn't have a good plan in place, it surely would have been 6:45.
Yeah, exactly. And then plan be damned. But the question of the night, with Chris Paul back in the rotation, what's your ideal closing lineup for the Dubs? And you're putting the onus on people to know jersey numbers, which I think is impressive.
I have a 25 character limit on these options. Had no choice.
Yeah, no, I was wondering how you were going to do it, but you are putting the onus on jersey numbers. Option number 1, and I have not voted for this yet, but option number 1 is Steph Pajemski. A lot of these jersey numbers are easy jersey numbers. Pajemski 2, Wiggins, Kuminga, or Draymond Green. That was option number 1. And then you've got Steph, Klay, Wiggins, Kuminga, and Draymond Green. The other option is Steph, Chris Paul, Klay, Kuminga, and Draymond Green. And then there was an other option that you provided as well, other/varies every night. I'm going to roll with other/varies every night just because I want to see where that showed up, and I'm looking at it right now. It is extremely close. We have a tie right now between other/varies and the Steph, Klay, Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond finishing lineup, both at 30%. So it's really split. 26% of the vote going to the Steph, Pajemski, Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond lineup, the current starting lineup when everybody is healthy. And the one that I guess shouldn't surprise us, but the one that's at the back of the pack, it's the one with Chris Paul. It's the really small Steph, Chris Paul, Klay Thompson, Kuminga, Draymond lineup. I'm glad we kept Kuminga in that lineup, Greg. I know we talked about not maybe keeping Kuminga in that lineup and maybe putting Wiggins in there. That it might have 4% of the vote if we had kept Wiggins in there over Kuminga with Chris Paul down the stretch. So I'm glad for the sake of balance and engagement that we leveled it off there. But it is really, 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 really close in the voting tonight here on our Dubs OT question of the night.
Yeah, and I think that the other/varies every night option was a little bit of a cop-out answer because that's where I would go to, just because there are so many things at play. Like, is Klay Thompson having the night that he had tonight, or is he having the second half he had against Denver, right? Like, that's a big variable right there. Chris Paul, I think, not surprised that one had the lowest. What I will tell you, JD, is I'm most surprised that the Klay iteration of the lineup got a higher percentage of the vote so far than the Pajemski iteration of the lineup. And I think that just shows how quickly people's opinions can change off of a couple of games, because now Klay looks like he is fully brand new and refreshed, and I think people are liking that they see it.
Yeah, I think Klay is always, when he's playing well, going to win. I think the benefit of the doubt from Dub Nation, because he's Klay Thompson, because of all the great moments, because of him helping them win 4 NBA championships. I think there's also, and rightfully so, a sympathy for everything that he's had to go through since 2019 with the multiple injuries and overcoming it and not being the same player and really, still being a productive player, but wearing the fact that he isn't the same player. And so I think there is a thoughtfulness and a want to see good big things from Klay Thompson from this fan base as somebody that's brought them so many great memories and so many big moments and so many clutch, masterful performances. So I think Klay ultimately is going to win out. Now, I wonder if Klay had one of his 1 for 11 games and the Warriors lost tonight, if we'd be having a little bit of a different conversation. But I'm not surprised to see Klay in there with over Pajemski, with Kuminga, with Wiggins, with Draymond, and obviously Steph's going to be out there no matter what. So 808 KNBR is the number if you want to weigh in. Our Dubs OT question of the night. What's your ideal closing lineup for the Warriors? We'll come back. We'll reset everything. We got Sounds of Silver coming up. We'll have some fun with numbers between now and 9 o'clock. It's Dubs OT with JD as the Warriors get the win over the Wizards. 123-112. It's KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
something? Yeah, like a swoosh.
Yeah. Dubs OT presents the sounds of silver. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
I loved what Moses did. Didn't surprise me at all. You know, he's such a pro. He's such a great young guy, just so high character. You know, to put him in the starting lineup and to have him come out and play the way he did, it didn't surprise me because it's kind of what he does. He just reminds me a lot of Loon. You know, he's very quiet but professional, does his work, and always stays ready.
Yeah, Moses Moody always ready, and I thought it was a great move by Steve Kerr to put him right in the starting lineup with Andrew Wiggins missing the game due to family and personal reasons. We hope everything's okay with Wiggins, and I know a lot of people, Warrior fans, are thinking, you know, you hope everything's okay, and it was, you know, right around this time, a little bit earlier last year, where, you know, Wiggins took some time away and wasn't back. And so obviously you hope that whatever's going on can be dealt with. And if Wiggins needs to take a couple of games, then so be it. But that he can also be in a position, while, of course, family first, but can get back and be able to be a productive player for this team as he has been really over the last month and a half, and it's been a welcome sight and a big part of the reason why the Warriors have been able to turn things around here to the tune of 12-5 since January the 24th. But for a night, it gives Moses Moody an opportunity. Moses Moody makes the most of that opportunity, and the Warriors win 123-112. It's Dubs OT with JD here on KNBR, the sports leader. Greg Silver on hand as well. Sounds of Silver. We do have some text messages to get to. We do still have a couple of phone lines open between now and 9 o'clock as we roll through here following the Warriors win. Question of the night relating to closing lineups. Check it out at KNBR on Twitter or Threads and vote for your favorite closing lineup. But we bring Greg Silver back in for Sounds of Silver. What do you got tonight, my man?
Yeah, well, it was a unique night on the road with the Warriors. We had a Klay Thompson interview from the court, and then we had Steve Kerr at the podium. And that was it so far of who has really spoken. I think that might be all we get for this early road game, but a lot of good cuts, too. So I decided that to honor the great work of our guy, Jacob, we're going to play a good handful of these cuts and start from the top down on our document with our highlights, JD. So we're going to start with Klay Thompson on a couple of cuts. And look, say what you want about how he's approached this whole bench thing. I think he has said all the right things, and you can tell that even if he's trying very hard to get back to the highest level he can possibly be, he is making a concerted effort to be a good teammate, a positive presence, and just embrace this stage of the season and his career. So here's Klay talking about coming off the bench and says it's been seamless.
It's been a pretty seamless transition. I mean, it does have its benefits as far as letting the game settle, seeing the floor before you enter, and just relaxing. I mean, the nerves, especially when you start, can be apparent when it's a big night, but when you're coming off the bench, it's a little easier to relax, and I think that my game is showing that.
Well, and I think a big part of it for Klay, unfortunately, is he just has not looked like a relaxed player. He's looked like a player, for the most part, that's always been just fighting something, right? Like, just whether he's playing well, he is like outwardly, been almost angry, like he's trying to show up anybody that didn't believe that he could still be a productive player. And then on the nights where he doesn't play well, it looks like you can just see him, going through all the different stages of, grief, basically, to try and, figure out, how to ultimately accept the fact that this is, where he is in his career. And he wants to win so freaking bad, Greg, that, when he doesn't play well and they lose, it's just like it's like a double whammy. And, he spins himself, I think, into oblivion to where, he just ends up playing worse, and it kind of snowballs on him. So I think, Klay is in a better spot when he doesn't have to think, because he is a thinker. Just come in, watch the game, figure out where you're going to get shots and who your matchups are going to be, and just let it rip. And I think, when you look at Klay Thompson and you look at these last, handful of games, he's been able to do it, and it's really helped the Warriors, win, and it's helped him be a more productive part of things. When you look at, I'm just looking at tonight, 25 points, 23 points in the first half on Sunday. He had 13 points in a more muted game in 21 minutes against Charlotte, and then the 35 before the break. So it's basically, he's had 3 really good games out of 5 off the bench, and I think he's had a 4th acceptable, solid game off the bench. 13 points in a night where the Warriors only scored 97. He did struggle against the Lakers, but if you're getting 3 great games off the bench, 1 solid game off the bench, and 1 bad game off the bench in a 5-game stretch, I think the Warriors would sign up for that over their final 5-game stretches here with 25 to go.
Yeah, Klay was fully locked in tonight with his role off the bench, and I think having Chris Paul back in the lineup, I think proved to be a real positive for him from the get-go. And I also want to point out the fact that he had 4 assists tonight, which I discussed in the opening in our pre-Dubs OT, if you will, when we were taking care of that 15-20 minute gap we had. And I said on the air that I thought it was going to be more, because I was really impressed with his ease of letting the game come to him. It felt like he was passing out of it at the right times. I didn't think he forced a lot of shots. He had a couple of heat check type of shots when he was really hot there in the third, but any shooter really does that for the most part. I think we've seen Klay force shots when it's the opposite of a heat check. It's I'm trying to force heat back into the situation and really struggling to get any rhythm going. I think, if you're up by double digits against a Wizards team and you're really feeling it, I'm okay with you taking a couple of heat check shots for Klay. Maybe in a game that's coming down to the wire like you had with like the Suns game and it was tit for tat all fourth quarter, I wouldn't want you taking tough shots early in the shot clock. That wasn't the case tonight. And here's another cut on Klay, just embracing the bench role and continuing to preach that theme that we've been talking about the last few minutes.
I'm embracing it. I love it. Some of the greatest to play this game have been 6-mans in their career. The first one that comes to my mind is Manu. So it was easy for me to make that transition. I'm not going to say it was easy, but it wasn't as difficult as people thought. And I can't think of a better backcourt coming off a bench in the league between me and Chris. So we're going to take great pride in that and try to, bring this team to heights we all aspire to reach.
Yeah, look, he's accepting it. Yeah, and again, I thought it was funny he caught himself there. It was easy. Well, it wasn't easy. I think everybody knows it wasn't easy. But, he has accepted it. He can still be a productive player. And the other part of it, too, Greg, is it doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to play significantly less either, right? It just means that he's not going to start. And, you look at the games that he's come off the bench, and, tonight, 27 minutes, but the Warriors had the game won with about 4 minutes to go, basically. 31 minutes Sunday. Ends up with 28 against the Lakers, 28 against Utah before the break. And so, he's not quite playing the 30, 35, 36 that had been more of the norm. I'm looking at, 32-7. He basically averaged, he's basically averaging 31 for the year up until the last couple of weeks. But, I think taking a little off, allowing Pajemski to get a little more run, I think it's going to keep him fresher down the stretch, and I think that's going to lead to more good games for Klay Thompson down the stretch.
And he addressed that very thing in one of the post games. I can't remember if it was Denver in the last game or maybe one of the games before that, but he said, just because I'm coming off the bench, I could still play 30 minutes, and I think he understands that when he's playing well, he's going to earn that high 20s, low 30s range of minutes and possibly be part of that closing lineup per our poll question of the night on Instagram. So, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I want to get to a couple quick Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line comments. 925, come on, at least be able to do it yourself. They want a do-it-yourself option.
We got a reply option out there on social media.
There is a reply option as well, and yes, there are. That was the point. Was you can click other, and then put yours in the comments. The 478 on the Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line, keeping it simple. Klay back and cooking off the bench. He's cooked in 3 of these 5 games, no doubt. He was on one tonight, and the Warriors needed it because Steph Curry didn't score in the first half and continued his struggles. We haven't really talked about Stephen Curry's struggles, so we can kind of wedge that conversation in here maybe a little bit. I don't bring it up a lot because I'm just never worried about it really lasting for a long time. So, that's why it doesn't come up a lot on this show. But I think, to win the game, as I mentioned earlier, with him playing, as poorly or shooting as poorly as he has here, to be able to win games doing it, you're that much closer to when he's going to ultimately snap out of it. But I know he doesn't want a night off. I don't think the Warriors can afford to give him a night off at this point. But just kind of where are you at on Steph's struggles and fatigue and all of those things?
I'm going to piggyback off of our guy, Tom Tolbert, who has spoke to this week on Tolbert and Copes, which is if Stephen Curry's struggling is on the list of concerns, then that's a list of concerns that you want. I think there's been so many things to point to this year that have gone wrong for the Warriors that a Steph Curry shooting slump, when you look at some of the games he's had at the age of 35, should not be a big concern. Now, if it was staying like this all the way up until April and the Warriors couldn't get wins because he was playing so poorly, well, yeah, Steph being in a slump is not a sustainable option for the way that this team is constructed. I also think it's just kind of the nature of a shooter's league to have this. And it makes sense that he's fatigued. I mean, he really has carried the load for this team the entirety of the season. Like, I don't see how he wouldn't hit a little bit of a wall at some point.
Yeah, it was inevitable that it was going to be coming. And again, the thing I keep going back to is the ability to win even when he's struggling. That is huge because he is going to snap out of it. And I think the Warriors are of the belief right now that they've got action as far as the new starting lineup, as far as Draymond playing center, as far as the Kuminga-Wiggins front court being able to play together, Chris Paul now with Klay off the bench, and the balance that they have with that group, and whether Saric remains a part of it or not with Trace Jackson-Davis. Like I think the Warriors believe that they are finally close to having the complete best version of themselves that can finish the season strong and have the potential to make a run, whether it's having to survive the play-in tournament to make that run, or whether it's playing well enough to get to the 6 seed or the 5 seed down the stretch here, which I still think is a tall ask. But if they do it, I mean, nobody's really going to want to face the Warriors if they're on a major heater over a 35-40 game stretch.
And look, I think if you look at the recent schedule for the Warriors, it's about right with how they've been playing. They lost to Denver, who is the defending champions, and I would say pretty clearly a better team than them. They lost to the Clippers, who have been playing incredible basketball since the month of, December, and they let that one slip away. The Clippers took advantage of that in the fourth quarter, and the Warriors very well could have had that one. They lost to the Hawks in overtime, which was a bummer given that the Hawks aren't very good, and Stephen Curry had 60 points. I think he had 52 leading into overtime, so that wasn't ideal, but they've been beating everybody else, and I think it's about indicative of where they are as a team right now. I don't think that there's a whole lot that you look at of, wow, they really should have had that one. Like, yes, they could have had the Clippers game, and that was a disappointing slip in the fourth quarter. but they're losing to teams that I would say are better than them, and they're taking care of business against teams that they should be taking care of business against if you want to climb out of the 10-seed hole.
Yeah, I think that's, if there is something that still needs to be bookmarked moving forward as far as, what boxes are left to be checked for this team, it's the fourth quarters, it's the collapses. Does that continue to happen at the level that it's happened? And then the other part of it is, can you beat some quality opponents between now and the end of the year? Because they really haven't done a lot of that. I do think that's a fair criticism. They did beat Phoenix, but they lost to Clippers. They lost to Denver. Boston will be a good test. Hell, I think even the Knicks are a good test coming up on Thursday when you look at the Eastern Conference and some of these games that are coming up. They got a couple of games against Minnesota still ahead. They have games remaining against the Pelicans. They have games remaining against Dallas that we talked about. The Lakers. Like, can you beat some of these teams? You still got to play Milwaukee at Chase coming up as the next home game a week from tomorrow. And so, yeah, a lot of enough games against some of those high end teams to where I think you really want to see where this Warriors team stacks up. There's enough winnable games, should win games on paper, I think, Greg, where you're feeling like this team can get enough wins to continue to move up without them. But those other wins, I think, are going to tell the story, if they can get them, as to truly whether or not they can get to 6 or better, and also tell you more legitimately what the ceiling is going to be for this team if they do wind up in a series against somebody. Because let's be honest, you end up 6 or better, you're probably playing the Clippers or the Nuggets, and those have not been the best matchups for this team this season.
Right. It's almost a punishment at that point when you look at the Warriors, other than not
that they've fared great against Minnesota or OKC either. I think 1-5 to this point in 6 head-to-head matchups against those two teams.
Well, every Warriors versus Thunder game -1 this year has been just a heart beaten out of your chest kind of affair, wire to wire.
No doubt. And the 2 against Minnesota, you had you had a close one, right? And then you had a close one, and then you had the fight breakout in the other one.
And that was like Pajemski's coming out party.
That was, Pajemski's, because Steph didn't play. So fair, Steph didn't play in the game, right, the night that all hell broke loose.
He did not. So that was kind of funny to see. 46.5 minutes, you got Brandon Pajemski leading the charge when it was at the point when everyone's like, oh, yeah, like, I kind of know who this guy is. It's that first-round pick, the rookie from, Santa Clara? And, he had a nice night, but I think it was indicative that it's tough to close against Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert. And not that those are, like, the standard of closers in the NBA, but they're good enough to take advantage of a lineup that's pretty shorthanded when you're looking at a team led by a rookie and Chris Paul, who's a playmaker but not necessarily a scorer down the stretch, and that game was just weird all around.
No, it definitely was. What else do we have left as far as the Sounds of Silver tonight?
Well, we got 3. They're all Steve Kerr. The first 2 are...
Let's roll through them.
Yeah, the first 2 are post-game, and they focus on a pretty similar topic, so we'll roll through them in short succession, but I did like both cuts.
Let's hold the pregame. Let's play the 2, and then we'll hold the pregame one for coming back after the break in our final segment.
All right, cool. I like that. So these both are about Steve Kerr talking about Chris Paul and Klay, and look, I got to tell you, JD, you said the Hall of Famers love Chris Paul and respect Chris Paul. You know what Hall of Famer really loves him is the head coach. And this is Steve Kerr talking about Chris Paul and Klay playing together and what kind of juice that brings to the bench unit.
What a luxury to come off the bench with Chris Paul and Klay Thompson. I mean, that's crazy. I think I said this before the game, but it feels like we've kind of found a nice combination of a starting group that we've been able to count on, over the last month, and a second unit that's been good all year. But, adding Klay to that only makes it better.
Without a doubt. And And, I mean, Klay, we ran through the numbers. I mean, that's an exceptional, start to this stretch here. And with Chris Paul, I mean, it does provide a hell of a better balance and, and just more options, I think, for Steve Kerr night to night to be able to go to. It feels like, and look, it's been a month-long, I think, grind to this point. But and I've said this almost every night here on the show, it does feel like the Warriors they've found who the pieces fit. Like a month and a half ago, the pieces didn't fit. And, now it's basically the same players, only the pieces fit together properly. And really the only guy that's been the odd man out has been Moody. And, and tonight he steps in and is able to contribute in a positive way. So they still have to figure out a way, I think, to get more out of him, to get Moody in more, not to get more out of him, but to get him in a little bit more than he has been. But other than that, this thing's clicking, and I think it's got some legs here down the stretch.
Yeah, it sure does. And you talk about Moody being the odd man out, and then the odd man in, or the key to the whole puzzle was Draymond Green coming back and giving them some kind of identity, which we've seen take form over the last month. Let's hear another cut on Kerr, and it's continuing to talk about Chris Paul and how it impacted Klay Thompson and Jonathan Kuminga.
That's just Chris Paul getting us organized. I think he motioned to J.K. to go set the screen, and J.K. knew to slip out because he's played with Chris and he understands the gravity that Klay has. So that was a great sequence. But that's again, that's what Chris does. He gets you organized, he gets you good looks, and all season long he's been such a high performer in terms of all of our best lineups. It seems like he knows how to play.
Yeah, it's just a perfect fit, and that's something that I think you move forward here, and it becomes a luxury basically, Greg, to be able to have things that start to add up in a positive light here when so much of it has been just kind of wondering what you have. And so, yeah, I mean the Warriors have got this thing in a really good spot. You have to hope for continued health moving forward here down the stretch of the season. But I think all in all, I think there's some reasons for some legitimate optimism as far as, basically having the group that you want to have out there, and then knowing that you've got a guy like Moses Moody in your back pocket who you can try to get some more run for, but also can fit in a couple of, different areas. Like he could be somebody that could take a few Wiggins minutes here. He could take a couple of Podziemski minutes there. Maybe even a couple Kuminga minutes here or there. So I think there are some options to try and get Moses Moody in the fold. All right, 808 KNBR is the number. We got one final segment here, an expanded edition of Dubs OT with JD here on Esports Leader. Great edition of Sounds of Silver. We'll keep it rolling on the other side with a conversation about something that Steve Kerr said pregame as he finally addressed the contract extension, which became official this afternoon. We also have a lot of comments to get to from the YouTube chat. I haven't forgot about you, YouTubers. Haven't forgot about you on Twitch. We'll get into those coming back as well. A few text messages and fun with numbers. So we got an action-packed final half hour. It's Dubs OT with JD as the Warriors win 123-112. It's KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Curry to CP3. We're repping the Bays team. Dubs OT with John Dickinson now continues. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
All right, final segment. Dubs OT with JD, Greg Silver, 123-112, the final. Warriors win it. So they are 30-27. They jump the Lakers, at least for a night, into 9th in the Western Conference playoff race. Chris Paul returns, first game since January 5th for CP3. 9 points, 4 boards, 6 assists, 4 steals for CP3 in 22 minutes. He helps lead a bench group that completely flipped the game in the second quarter. Warriors found themselves down 9, and then Saric, Klay Thompson, Moses Moody, Chris Paul, each with threes. Warriors went from down 9 to up 3, and they really didn't look back despite the fact Stephen Curry didn't score in the first half. He did have 18 in the second half, but 6 of 21 for Steph in this one, and 4 of 16 from 3, and the Warriors able to survive it. Excellent Jonathan Kuminga game, 21 points on 10 of 13 shooting for JK. Moses Moody got the start. Andrew Wiggins out due to personal reasons. We hope everything's okay and Wiggs can get back into the equation here in pretty short order. But all systems go. Sluggish start, rough Steph game, but the Warriors with more than enough to comfortably win without really being threatened down the stretch to beat the Wizards for win number 30 and their 6th consecutive road win as well. Which we'll get to the significance of that coming up here in Fun with Numbers momentarily. All right, let's get to this Steve Kerr cut, and it's a little bit of an expanded edition of Sounds of Silver, but this is one we were going, Greg, back and forth about before the game, and it was Steve Kerr finally addressing with a little more clarity and detail, the contract extension, which was reportedly agreed to going back to, last Friday, but made official here today. And so, the announcement was made formally by the Warriors, and Steve Kerr agreeing to that 2-year contract extension. So he signed for the remainder of this year plus 2, and he addressed it during his pregame press conference. So here's the head coach.
Yeah, I think I felt very comfortable, just making this, a 2-year extension. Joe felt comfortable doing it as well. I think we're in a really unique situation where, we have an era that's winding down and another era that's coming, and we're trying to make them merge and make the most of that, obviously this year and next year. And it's been really fun. I've really enjoyed this season despite the fact that we've lost some really tough games. I love coaching this group, and it's been an exciting season, a challenge, but all enjoyable. So let's keep it rolling for another couple of years and then reassess at that point.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, and his deal aligns now with Steph Curry's. It aligns with Draymond, although Draymond's got the player option for the 3rd year. It potentially aligns with Klay Thompson. If Klay Thompson ends up with a 2 or a 3-year deal, I don't think there's any way Klay's going to get a 4-year deal now. I think that ship has sailed. But I do think 2 plus an option for a 3rd is something that could be on the table. We'll see. I still kind of think that 2 and 48 that was the reported offer for Klay seems still to me to be a little low. I could see Klay maybe coming down in years, but maybe want it to be more like, I don't know, 3 and 75 or 3 and 80, something like that gets it a little bit closer to maybe a 26 or a $27 million average value, as opposed to maybe in the low 20s or even pushing the mid 20s. But as far as 2 years does make a lot of sense, right? Like why would either side at this point want to overextend and say, all right, it's going to be a 5-year deal? Like nobody knows where the hell the Warriors are going to be, 2 years from now, basically. And so, but it aligns with now, I think, Greg, some of the hope that this team has shown here over the last month and a half, and the better balance between young and old, and the guys that are kind of riding off into the sunset, although not really there yet. That's more of a 26, 27 kind of a conversation in terms of the calendar, but also the emergence of some of these young players and their ability to make an impact.
Yeah, and I think what's kind of crazy and marvelous all at once is that it seemed like not very long ago signs were pointing more toward Klay Thompson not being a Warrior next year, and now it's seeming like, you know what, maybe he will stick around. I think he does want to stick with his trio of Draymond, Steph, and Klay, and I know we did see that with the San Antonio Spurs, but outside of that, this is a pretty unheard of thing for winning this many championships. 3 very different personalities of stars all sticking together and doing it on one team for their whole career. I mean, if this really does come to fruition and Klay Thompson re-signs and you get Steve Kerr, Steph, Klay, and Draymond all together while trying to develop these young players, that is something that, regardless of if they reach another finals or not, if they reach another Western Conference finals or not, people in the Bay Area have to stop and just enjoy a little bit, because this isn't something that you're probably going to see for the Warriors franchise in, I don't know, the next century, like if ever again.
Well, and I also think you have to look at it this way, because I don't think that the 2-year extension and sort of how everybody is aligned, don't mistake that for the Warriors are comfortable being what they've been this year and last year. Like, don't mistake that for them being comfortable, basically. Now, this team could prove themselves to be better than mid. They've been better than mid for the last month and a half. But overall, they're still mid. Like this, and they were mid last year, right? They were mid but won a playoff series last year. They're still mid as far as this season goes. Don't mistake the willingness to have all these players line up with a comfortable, with being comfortable for being mid, because there's still the reports out there that the Warriors want to go big and could use, maybe package players to try and get another star or a bona fide true number 2 to ride along with Stephen Curry. And if Klay is a part of the bench group and Draymond's still playing at a high level, that could be something that dramatically improves their chances at maybe making another run in these next couple of years toward a championship. So I think if there is a pushback, I've seen from the fan base, Greg, it's been, well, they're accepting mediocrity or they're accepting being mid. I don't think this is an indictment of that one iota.
I had a little bit of a back and forth online yesterday, day before, maybe. I don't know. It all blends together. But the point was, it was about the Warriors and their lack of going and getting a 7-footer. And this person, we had a good back and forth discussion.
Topic.
Yeah, but the word that was used where I was like, okay, well, hold on, was complacency, and how it's BS to be complacent. And I'm a team that spends as much as they do and is also as competitive as they are. That's not complacent to me. I'm fully with you that don't confuse, yeah, we want to ride this thing out together with we're okay being mediocre. It's no, we got to take advantage of a ticking clock. It's not going to be around forever. We don't know how long Steph is going to be this version of Steph. What is Klay in 2 years? What's Draymond in 2 years? I mean, the standard with which they want to reach is certainly not what they have been for the larger part of this year and floating around the play-in tournament. Like, that is not anything of what Steve Kerr, Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, Joe Lacob wants to be a part of.
No doubt. And so I think the belief is, let's see how far this group truly can go this year. Let's see what it winds up over the final. I think it's basically going to end up being about 40, 42 games when it's all said and done from the starting point at which there was a little bit of a turnaround here, and see what they do in the playoffs, see who they play, how they go out, if they make a deep run. And then you can evaluate everything from there. How seasons end matters. I say that a lot. How a season ends really, really matters as far as the way you look to go. And look, I think if the Warriors get to the play-in tournament and lose, then they can't run it back with this group again. Like they can't. They're going to have to do something different. If they get to the first round and lose, I think depending upon who they lose to, you lose to a Minnesota or an OKC, and I think you can't run it back. At that point, you lose to a Clippers or Denver. You can't run it back, but you'd be more. I think you would look at that differently than if you go out in the play-in tournament versus if you go out maybe losing to a Minnesota or an OKC, some teams with lesser experience. Although again, no slouch are Minnesota and OKC. Minnesota and OKC are both better teams than the Sacramento team that the Warriors played last year. Like there's no question. And Denver is, and the Clippers are. So, almost no matter what, the Warriors are going to end up with a tougher first-round series, assuming they make the first round, than they had a year ago, and not by a little. But I think the belief is that this Warriors team is going to be playing at a higher level, Greg, and is going to be just more complete than that team was that kind of tried to cobble it together at the end of the season.
Yeah, and look, the approach has to be one game at a time. Right now, you worry about your opponent when you get there. You can't be thinking about, we're the 6 and we're going on the road to the Clippers in the first round. Like, whoa. You guys are 9 right now, closer to 10 than you are 8.
Yeah. Well, can you imagine the one and done? Like, could you imagine, like, right now, the Warriors would be, and I try to put this in perspective every day. I say it to myself every day. I just kind of look at the end of the night and I go, well, what would it be today? And the Warriors right now would be home game at Chase against the Lakers, losing you're out. Like losing you're out, like right there. And and if you win, you'd have to beat Sacramento or Dallas, basically. If you win on the road, you'd have to beat Sacramento or Dallas. So, no picnic. Obviously, and then you're playing Minnesota at that point. And so, although Oklahoma City has a shot to move into the 1 spot, they're playing Houston right now. They're up 5 late in the third quarter. So, yeah, all good conversation to keep moving forward here. All right, let's do some fun with numbers real quick, and then we'll reset the poll. And I do want to get to a few YouTube comments before we end the night.
This is Dubs OT with JD. Time now for fun.
I'm a fun guy.
With numbers.
No, I'm just having fun.
On KNBR 104.5 and 680. Streaming live on KNBR.com and the KNBR app.
All right, very quickly running through these. Warriors extended their season-high road winning streak to 6, longest road winning streak in 5 years. You got to go back to 2018-2019 when the Warriors won 11 consecutive games. In the final year at Oracle, the final year of Kevin Durant, they won 11 straight on the road. Warriors are now 10-3 in February, and because this is a leap year, they'll get one more game in February on the 29th, coming up on Thursday against the Knicks. So the turnaround started really then, the final game of January when they beat the Philadelphia 76ers at Chase, 11-3 in the last 14. Warriors sweep the season series against Washington. They are now 20-9 when they score at least 120 points, and they shot 50% from the field and had 39 assists, 12-2 this year when shooting 50% from the field and having 30 assists. The Warriors also made 21 three-pointers, 21 of 46 for the Warriors. They are 6-1 when they make at least 23s. The bench dominance, 59-15, as the Warriors again will continue the road trip on Thursday in New York at Madison Square Garden. Klay Thompson, team high 25 off the bench, so 20 or more for Klay in 21 games this season, including each of the last 2. Klay Thompson as a reserve, shooting 47.9%, 44.9% from 3, and has made all 7 of his free throws in 5 games. Jonathan Kuminga, 14th 20-plus point game of the season. He ends up with 21 points. We talked about Moses Moody, 5th start. Warriors are 4-1 in the 5 games that he starts. And Chris Paul, after a 21-game absence, returned with 9, 4, 6, and a season-high 4 steals for Chris Paul. He was connecting everything out there tonight. And
that's why you don't play defense with your face.
One other nugget I had was on Stephen Curry, which was the last time in the regular season that Stephen Curry was held scoreless in a first half. You got to go back to November of 2012. November of 2012 in the regular season. And then in the playoffs, the last time it happened overall was Game 6 in Houston in the Western semifinals in 2019. And so do you remember, Greg, what Steph did that night in Houston in Game 6?
33 points.
33 second-half points, and without Kevin Durant, the Warriors ended the Rockets' season and beat them 4-2 to go on to the conference finals.
That was one of the all-time Kevon Looney games, by the way.
Yes, it was. I was on hand in Houston for that game and every game of that whole run, that whole year, and that was a hell of a night. And they basically ended the Rockets on that night, that iteration of the Rockets, at least with Chris Paul, obviously, who was injured. Actually, no, that was the year before that Chris Paul was injured. Actually, that was the conference finals. So
because I remember sending out some texts saying I don't want to ever hear about Chris Paul's hamstring again after that.
Yep. No, that was the 2019 semifinals. Warriors went on to sweep Portland and then ultimately lose to the Raptors in the NBA Finals. So, 33 in the second half. Curry with 18 in the second half tonight. All right, I do want to get into some comments. Apologies for being late. There were a couple of texts quickly. The 309 on the Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line. Warriors want to go 3-1 on this trip. Good start, blowing out awful Washington. Yeah, you would take 3-1 for sure. And then this was one I wanted to get into from the 925. I think it's imperative that Kerr settles on a consistent second unit by April. Need to build chemistry a la Kerr's first 2 seasons when it was always the same 5 guys. I agree with that. I don't think it has to be necessarily the same 5. I think it can be, but the foundation of it has to be the same 5. And maybe Moody gets in here and there, but I think we're seeing that Steve Kerr wants to do that, Greg, which I think you're seeing it with the switch to Podziemski and Kuminga and Wiggins together, and Moody being the odd man out, unfortunately, as part of trying to have trying to have that consistency. So I think he's trying to find it. I think Chris Paul's return is sort of the last piece. He's going to have to figure out whether Saric is going to be a part of it, how much Looney and TJD are going to be a part of it. But I think the 925 is onto something there as far as trying to find that consistency as far as the bench group. All right, couple of notes here from the YouTube chat that I did want to get to here before we end the program. And, man, almost 3 full hours here, Dubs OT with JD tonight. Good stuff. Appreciate Greg Silver in studio. Appreciate Jacob Violante as well, who's helping cut up a lot of the audio.
Greg Silver.
Two of the best in the business. Rockin' New Era 84, a win is a win. Needed this win after the loss versus Denver. Yeah, it was no doubt. Had to be a win. Douglas Mikes, Steph wanted to make that a game, make that game more interesting than it should have been. Yeah, tough. Regulator, Steph and Dre picked the right game to have subpar performances, no doubt. Warriors have no shot to win against probably the Knicks or Boston if Steph, and Draymond are playing at that level. Rockin' New Era, Moody broke some ankles. Irwin Kwong, CP3 equals fourth quarter closer. We shall see. Slevin saying the lack of scoring when adding Dre and Pods is scary, even more when Steph isn't on fire. The Warriors are going to have to find some scoring. They got it from Kuminga and Klay Thompson off the bench. Douglas Mike, Saric almost single-handedly threw that game. Saric was bad at the beginning of the fourth quarter. He was, without a doubt, bad at the end of the fourth quarter. Tough stuff there. And, yeah, Rebel to sound, Sarge will only play in the playoffs if others get into foul trouble. He's not going to play, I don't think. In there may be some matchups where you can, but I think Kerr, as he's shown, will go away from anybody in the playoffs if they're not productive. And so I think that is something that you have to keep in mind. We've seen him go away from Kuminga. We've seen him go away. He'll go away from Saric in a blank in a series. So I think you got to keep that in mind as well. Columbus O'Banner. We can beat any team in the NBA. Our focus is increased. Our chemistry is improving as well. We are healthy. We have figured it out. Our rotations are the key moving forward. Yeah, the rotations are getting a lot better. It's a lot more consistent. Douglas Mikes can't give Klay $27 million a year if Lacob wants to get out of the tax. That's a good point. The only way to do that is if they let go of some salaries. That's a good point. There is a fine line, without a doubt, on what Klay can be paid. There is a number that they're going to have to hit. That is a good point and should be noted if they're not going to offload somebody else. So, yeah, all the math. We'll get all the details of all the math as we get closer to the summer. But I think that is a salient point here to bring up. Irwin Kwong is going to get the final line of the night. I think we need more games from this currently healthy roster to determine what the ideal rotations are. This might be the first time everyone's healthy out of the first few weeks of the year. Yeah, and then you didn't have Wiggins, who missed due to the personal reasons. But that opened up the door for Moses Moody to be able to have an impact. Final thoughts to you, Greg Silver, as I pushed 5, 6, 8 minutes beyond when we were supposed to end the show. But you said you didn't care.
Yeah,
so.
No, I did say that I didn't care. You're exonerated. So, good stuff, JD. This was awesome. We had a long show, a really good show. I'm happy that we've started to kick into a rhythm. Big thank you to Jacob back here, cutting a lot of our post-game sound. And big thank you to anyone who's still with us or listening back to this, our Dubs devotees. You guys are a big part of the show, too. So excited to get back to it Thursday, Friday. Sunday's a big game, so this is it, man. This is the home stretch, and wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Check us out Thursday right around 6:45 to 7 o'clock. It's probably going to be closer to 7 on Thursday. That's a TNT game. Warriors at the Knicks. Those games tend to run a little bit longer, maybe start a little bit later. And, yeah, appreciate it. Remix channel, you the man. Good show, JD and Greg. Yeah, good stuff. From one and all. Appreciate all the love. Amar Singh, Looney was a plus 20. Looney in his 10 minutes isn't an issue. I wanted to give Amar the final word on that as I kind of scroll through a few more here. All right, that'll do it. We'll talk to you Thursday. Thanks to Jacob. Thanks to Greg. I'm JD. We will see you. It's been Dubs OT with JD here on KNBR, the sports leader.
Butler dropping it off nicely. Oh, Podziemski with a block. Took it from Rashawn Holmes. Klay Thompson, 3. He's on fire. This has been confirmed. Exhibit A. Feed that man. He's hungry.
That's just like making a game winners.
Pocket 3. Curry 3.
Some days I think about like homework in school, but then, I got to look and I don't have it.
I love it.